in the morning. You got me up, all cause you need to talk. To 4 in the evening. Wanna break up, say that you've had enough. I'm tired of talking, again and again. Argue about everything. You are my darling. This kiss and make up, I know you wanna touch. You call me every night, call me every day. I just wanna get you alone now. Trust me when I say, we gon' be okay. We just gotta boom, bada boom, ba. I don't wanna fight, you know that I'm right. Baby, let me talk to your body. We gon' be okay, hear me when I say.
Are you a man looking for that special someone? Then we have just what you need. Join us for an experience like you've never seen before. We are setting out across the African diaspora to bring you beautiful ladies who are in search of one thing: love. We will feature women from all walks of life with differing backgrounds. Our in-depth interviews will ask all of the important questions.
Are modern men becoming frustrated because of the lack of traditional women within America? O'Shea Duke Jackson started a channel to parrot the show that I'm doing today with Ike Ogamian as we talk about a concept I created called Passports and Pearls. Passports and Pearls is synonymous to the gospel, where it tells us not to cast our pearls to those that are not suitable for men that are looking for greatness and valor. This show is a reflection of the show that I did with Dre with Love Crossing Borders, as he talked about dating and relationship in South America. But I decided to more or less use this show as a parrot to continue the conversation to those men that are serious about finding wives in a time where traditionalism and things associated with masculinity often is under the guise of being misogynistic. Join me today live as Ike and I talk about the perils, but also the joys of dating women in Africa. And if African women from the West, the South, the East, or the North are viable choices for men that are looking for traditional women that are ready to not only build legacies, but also to serve. Enjoy the show. And remember this: if it ain't 7, it ain't kosher. If it ain't kosher, it ain't right. There are 7 steps that a man must go through in order to become optimized, and getting the right woman as it relates to family is paramount to helping the man get those needs satiated that can help him become the better version of himself. Enjoy the show. Go subscribe to O'Shea Duke Channel's Jackson's dating channel, and let's have a conversation.
In my palm, my girl, she know she the one. I put the ice on her hand, I put some ice on her arm. See me shining in the light, know you found me in the dark. Talking how you wanna leave, girl, you made this far. Taking trips overseas, no, I won't be long. We came up from the weeds, now it's top floor. All these big gets on her wrist, VVS is on her neck. Make it spinning, I don't stress. When I make it stretch. Double back to back then. Down broke, now we rich. Spend it on a let it spin. Down with me to the end. That my best friend. That my best friend. That my best friend. I'ma spend it on her, cause she all mine. That's me. Spend it on a challenge, cause she all mine. There for my first cake, then we hit on a cake. $500,000 on the way, then $1 million on the way. Eating good, full plates, eating good, say grace. Eat her up, get thanks. She got cake birthday. I can't waste no way, I can't waste no play. My girl, whoa, whoa, something like the baddest chick. My girl, whoa, whoa, came from the rags to rich. Hit the road running, I had to tell her I had to get it. She understood, but she spoiled, so when she get mad, she dip. All these big yes on her wrist, VVS is on her neck. Make it spend and don't stress. When I make it stretch. Double back to back end. Down broke, now we rich. Spend it on her, let her spin. Down with me to the end. That my best friend. That my best friend. That my best friend. I'ma spend it on her, cause she all mine. Spend it on a challenge, cause she all mine. All these big yes on her wrist, VVS is on her neck. Make it spin and don't stress. When I make it stretch. Double back to back end. Down broke, now we rich. Spend it on her, let her spin. Down with me to the end. That my best friend. That my best friend. That my best friend. I'ma spend it on her, cause she all mine. All these big yes on her wrist, VVS is on her neck. Make it spin and don't stress. Spend it on a challenge, cause she all mine. That my best friend. That my best friend. That my best friend.
We're about to start this show on tonight. As I got my man Ike Ogamian in the building, man. We're gonna have a very powerful conversation, and we're gonna be talking about passports and pearls. As passports and pearls is a hashtag that I created to celebrate and commemorate while men are traveling abroad, but not only learning and doing as it relates to casting their pearls to women that are viable and women that are good options. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show as I bring it to you live from the greatest state in the union, the Tar Heel State. As Ike Ogami and I talk about are African women a viable option for men dating outside the confines of America. Get your pens and paper together, guys. Share this show, share the stream. Let's do it. Hold tight, guys. Hope you guys can hear me. Hold on. Hold tight. Can you guys hear me? If you can hear me, hit one. Give me 1 minute. We're gonna get it. Oh, here we go. We got it. Yeah, that's right. So you guys can hear me get one. Let's have a conversation with the Nigerian prince, Irrational. Let's do it. Culture. Have a powerful conversation on tonight. I got my man Ike in the house, and we're going to be talking about a phenomenon, or I'm not going to say a condition, but it is a condition called consistent. Dr. William Glasser said that needs drive behaviors. And one of those 5 critical elements of Dr. William Glasser is the need of power, belonging, and also having fun. Ike Ogami, how you doing, sir? And tell the people who you are, and we're going to have a very comprehensive conversation on tonight.
Shout out. My name is Ike. I'm a YouTuber, engineer, social commentator. I am in the space of being better and doing better. And in that regard, I am glad to be here today having this rather relevant conversation with you. Okay. Again, YouTuber, engineer, social commentator. I like to talk about being better and doing better, keeping things reasonable, measurable, actionable, right, and target oriented. So let's see if we can do that with regards to this topic today. But you don't have a camera today, or your camera just blacked out, or that's your
Oh, you can't see me?
Yeah, your camera. It's like you probably have the lens cover on your camera still or something.
No.
There you go.
You see me now?
I can see you now.
Okay. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, it might be a delay. Been having some issues with my internet, man. But you are an engineer, and so the question that I'm going to ask you: are American women, or have they been too engineered not to be suitable options for men in America? And if so, I tell the audience why.
Well, I was born and raised in Nigeria, right? Now, there's nothing I can tell the audience, to the degree to which we have a Western audience here, that I can tell you about your particular history or the process whereby we find ourselves now politically and socially, and also within the landscape of dating and marriages and whatnot. There's nothing you haven't heard before that I can tell you, right, in that regard. So I'm going to make it a little bit more abstract then, okay? Let's talk about the degree to which your nature is in line with what the duties your society imposes on you and the aspirations that the culture kind of says in general, the degree to which these are aligned. And that if they're not aligned, then you're going to have a situation where, quote unquote, as you mentioned, people are not bred to meet or to be able to satisfy certain duties, or maybe the duties are not even well understood, or the whole idea of a duty is kind of thought of as either a bad thing, poorly understood, it is feared, and all those kinds of things. So again, let's say we were to assume that a man had a nature, and it was in his nature to go out there and conquer things and spread his seed. And then you tell the man, okay, well, we got that aspect of your nature, but we have a duty that we're going to ask of you to say, okay, you need to take care of your children. And well, the man's like, but that kind of chafes against my nature in a certain sense. I want glory and stuff. And then the society says, well, we'll give you glory for we'll say you're a good man for being a family man. We'll take care of that. And such kind of a dealing is what I'm talking about. So you have your nature, you have the duties and aspirations, these all being dealt in the manner that is where everyone gets its due in that whole picture, right? Now, if on the other hand, you have something like the West where the nature aspect has kind of been denigrated in favor of complete aspirational freedom, right? So if it's like you have that nature and you have the duty thing, you have the aspiration is completely taken over, right, in the West, where any kind of substrate logic, by that I mean a biological substrate, that's not believed in. Definitely cultural and traditional substrates are obviously nonsense in this construct, right? So everything now is about an aspirational freedom. But meanwhile, you still have a nature though. Okay, you still have a nature and its demands are still there. And so you see this kind of a mismatch and people are just kind of vacillating in the wind. You see the phenomenon of women going in a particular direction aspirationally because of what they've been told, and it may perhaps not be in charge or in line with their personal nature. And the reason I say personal nature is because there's always a bell curve, a distribution in traits. In other words, you have outliers. You have women whom are perfectly fine being masculine and captains of industry type, and will make all necessary sacrifices to do that. But that is not the norm. But when you start blurring things out like this in terms of everything becomes now aspirational, everybody now wants to be one particular type of person, ignoring their nature. Duty becomes like a bad word. So that's the situation that we find ourselves in. Now, the opposite will be the case, or if that's one extreme, it's a sliding scale that we're looking at when let's say we go over to somewhere like Africa, where in West Africa, women have a very close identification with their nature. Same thing with men, right? So people are not afraid. Like women are not afraid of being women. Like good, bad, and ugly, whatever it is with being a woman. Yes, I'm a woman. Oh yeah, you know how women are. That's why I did that thing, right? So you would hear a woman a woman in Africa would say such a statement as, "Well, you know how women are." That that's So it's like an understanding of both the virtues and the vices associated with a particular nature, right? A complete embrace of that, and understanding that for society to have lasted, it needed to have made that deal again between what it's demanding, the sacrifices it's demanding from you, and also aligning it with your nature as we go along, right? So therefore, the duties associated with being a woman is not, because there's a deal there, there's a trade. It's like, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z as a woman because it's going to make me feel this particular kind of way and taken care of and all that kind of stuff, which is in tune with my nature, right? As an average woman, right? And so this is the disconnect here that I would say. So the idea of, if I go back to your question of, well, are Western women not bred for particular duties? If I now rephrase it this way, then again, the historical context, the line, the trajectory, feminism, this, that, and the other, everybody knows that stuff. But the point here, one of the fundamental ways of looking at it is just, okay, you have nature, okay, and you have these aspirational things, and then you have duty. And the West has gone way overboard on the aspirational end of things and sacrificing nature and duty as a result.
Right. And so it's safe to say that it's caused a condition called relationship entropy. And you being an engineer, you understand that physics play a role in the operationalization of anything. We call it the kinetic, because anything that's kinetic is power, and it's also on a pendulum. But we're gonna get deep into this. O'Shea Duke Jackson talked about or created a dating channel in Africa. We'll look into that as well. I've done my bloodline research, Ike, and I'm 43% Nigerian. Based on my DNA ancestry, when you take my mom's ancestry, my father's ancestry, I'm 43% Nigerian. I'm roughly about 20% Cameroon, Congo, and then it goes from Mali to Senegal, I know Ivory Coast, Ghana, and then 5% Brit. But to be more succinct, man, I think I asked you the question, and you did a good job breaking down the nature aspect. And it sounds like to me that solipsism and a lot of other factors have overridden the natural intrinsic nature of a woman based on liberal indoctrination, to the point that she's lost the true essence of femininity, and how that true essence can be an asset not only to the psyche of a man, but to the evolution of a healthy relationship. But to segue that, I think I asked you the question, or I ask you again. Are African women a viable option for traditional men in the West? Are African women a viable option for traditional men in the West? And if so, I want you to tell the audience why.
Okay, so
before you tell, hold tight. Before you tell me, shout out to my man Shocks 112 for that $9 hitter. Thank you, Shocks, for the $9.99 super sticker. Thank you, brother. That's a deal, right? I appreciate it, Shocks. Thank you for that $9 super sticker. And guys, get the likes up, share the content, go subscribe to Ike Ogamian's channel, Ogamian's channel, and share this stream, because some of you men that are single are looking for viable outcomes in women. And, you know, consistent with the show I did with Dre with Love Crossing Borders, you should not cast your pearls to swine. You should give your pearls to women that are suitable, but not only women that are suitable, women that honor and respect you as men. Because in behavior modification, you don't change bad behavior by reinforcing. You don't change bad behavior by reinforcing it in a negative way. You change that bad behavior by either walking away and not feeding the supply, or the narcissism that you see many times with women in the West. But anyway, Ike, back to point, brother. I want you to break that down for me. Why are African women a viable option for men in the West?
100%. I'll talk about why they're viable options, but I will definitely not. I'm not in the marketing department for African women. But if I were a salesman, I understand that one has to then have a conversation with the client, right? So the viable part is basically saying, look, my tomatoes are healthy and they're ripe and they're in good order. And then I'll then have to talk to you about what exactly you're in the market for tomato wise. What do you understand about what, you know, this thing, and is it up to your expectations? What do you bring? All those other kinds of things. But 100%, to the degree to which you want a woman that is not afraid of her nature, right? A woman that is fine with being a woman, a woman that understands that femininity is not about this thing that they talk about, which is like something like resting in your femininity, as if though it was some kind of I sleep in clouds and eat grapes and wake up in a rich man's bed. That's what femininity is, right?
Right.
Understanding that basically there's a duty aspect, there's a sacrifice aspect, but there's a nature aspect that they revel in, and that they're fine with. In other words, and then that there's a bargain that they're freely willing and open to make with a man as a man. In other words, they're looking at that other creature over there called a man. They know it's different from them. They know it's a man, okay, and they understand what a man. Not that they have to understand, but they know that it too has a nature, desires, and is willing to make a deal. So that aspect, and also in terms of the training, that the cultivation that continues to not only emphasize but reward this narrative, right? And the social network of, you know, a strong extended family network that makes sure that these kinds of things continue. A network, especially the network amongst women, right? Because they're the ones that will enforce these normative things as to what a woman should do, what she ought to be. The shaming thing is alive and well, and all that. So from, again, going full out there saying viable, because from this social aspect, right? The social aspect of a network of society that keeps these particular upholds these particular virtues and such. A woman that is raised to understand that she's a woman and not be afraid of it, understand that there is a nature to you, okay, and that there's certain duties and sacrifices, and then you have to make that balance, and that's fine. So, and knowing fully well also that on the other side there's a man that has a nature to it, and so that is definitely a viable product. Then the question is, what exactly is the African American man looking for then, or what is his understanding of this enterprise here, right? of what he's trying to get out of it? Because there may be a couple of things going on. There may be just, let's say, if I were to and I'm not making straw man arguments here. I'm just trying to say, okay, amongst the whole people who may be looking over at a space like this and saying, oh, Western women have X, Y, and Z issues because of these particular things we just laid out. There's a mismatch. And it's not just Western, we would say Western society has an issue, right? Because of this mismatch between duty, nature, and then the aspiration aspect, where aspirational things have just completely blown away all kinds of substrate, especially having to do with nature, right? So if you're there and then you're looking away and you're trying to find a solution, one thing you may be doing may just be kind of like a self-soothing, therapeutic, or I just want to say, you see, I have options, or let me just continue the navel gaze about the issue. That may be one thing you're doing. Okay. Another thing which may then lead to a certain kind of fantasy, you know, there will be a fantasy which embellishes the truth about the other side. And perhaps because coming from the West, you're not used to nature, you may not understand that, oh, the woman over there has a nature, yes, and she's embracing it, but it's still a nature you have to contend with, for example, right? Like, you know, and are you bringing your nature game to the fore, your nature game and your duty game? Are they up to standard to deal with this particular dance? Because it's a difficult dance, the relationship dance, the procreation dance, the generational building dance. It's a difficult dance regardless of whether society is intact or not, right? So the answer to the question is yes, 100% they're viable because the social structures exist that emphasize certain virtues about the duties and the nature of both sexes.
I want you to be specific when you mean virtues and duties. I want you to normalize that and specify what you mean by that. Are you talking about the duties as it relates to honor and tradition and knowing that a relationship is not about her feelings, but it's about the community, the tribe, and the legacy of the institution of marriage and family?
Yes. So having conjugal duty, let's say, the fact that you can put conjugal and then say duty right next to it, okay, or conjugal rights, which is the other side of duty. You know, where both, you know, your husband has conjugal rights and you have a conjugal duty. Mm-hmm. We talk about certain things such as a woman is responsible for the home, a woman is responsible for the image of the man in a certain sense, right? It's like the marketing department. These things are emphasized and not just by her grandma and uncle and you know, if she goes to a church, that person, but the entire society as a whole, right? That these particular things are when either a boy or a girl is being raised, okay, they're gathering from the ether, from the milieu, from the matrix that is around them, what exactly is expected of them from that duty aspect. So yeah, and I get you asking me to specify more what are these duties and these values things, and I went to conjugal because something that is obviously a contentious one where people want to, you know, contend and fight about it as though, you know, because it's so swamped in feelings and this and that. But the thing is, it is a duty, and it is seen as a duty over there, right?
Right.
It's not about how whether you felt particularly sexy that day or whatever. And even if you're not, because duties and these targets and things like that doesn't mean you're always getting them 100%, right? Everybody, you know, for all have sinned, right? Everybody falls short of all kinds of targets all the time. So the idea is, oh no, it's not sorry, that you're perfectly let's say in the case of this conjugal duty thing, as a woman, you know, perfectly, you know, reaching that ideal or the standard, but that the standard is there is the important thing. That it's there, it is understood, and it is respected, because it is part of making a bargain with the other, with the man whom has a nature and then also has duties too that they have to, you know, live up to, right? The man is going to take care of, you know, generally speaking, financially, economically, in real world terms, in other words, right? The fact that there is food, clothing, and shelter and walls around to keep you from freezing to death, that's the man's responsibility, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And he takes that on and says, okay, cool, I understand that. And it's a duty of mine. It's not because I just love doing this thing so much, right? But it's a duty of mine. And then on the other hand, and again, just like the man is not going to always hit that 100%, right? But the idea is about the standard being there, understood, and respected. So whether it be, so everything involving, taking care of the home, right? The cooking, the cleaning, a certain aspect of the child rearing, things having to do with the branding, as I mentioned earlier, the making the man's image. All those things are within her purview. She understands that that's her role and her duties. Some of which, because your duties also always kind of match with your nature a little bit. A man is proud that he, if he gets that feedback from both society and his family, that he is providing, right? So a woman too is kind of satisfied that they're creating a nice warm nest that also looks good to the outside world in terms of their image and all that kind of stuff, and so on. So those are some of the virtues that I was talking about.
Guys, do me a favor, hit the like button, go check out Ike Ogami's channel. Let's get this stream up to at least 50 to 100, guys. You got a real African brother in the house, and he is sensitive to black men in the West. He's not trying to force his culture or his culture ideologies or customs on us, but I do consider Ike what I call African in America. Well, he's an African American, or what a term I created called an American of the African diaspora, because his bloodline goes back to Nigeria. Mine goes back to Nigeria as well, based on DNA sampling. And you see, I got that Nigerian swag. And so mine goes back to Nigeria as well. But guys, share the stream, hit the like button. If you have not donated to the channel, donate to Cash App $7 Smalls. I just kicked out almost $3,000 in some upgrades for this channel. I got some new things coming up for you guys, man. I'm going to start doing the membership channel as well. And I really invest in this channel. $3,000. Got a brand new interface and a brand new system I'm working on. Literally about $3,000. So I'm trying to make sure you guys get the best. And so donate to the channel if you like what I'm doing. Go check out Ike, because see, I wanted you guys to hear from an African perspective. An African perspective. Ike, O'Shea started a channel talking about dating in Africa. I don't know if have you seen it yet.
I think it's called the Pan-African Dating. It's a channel itself, right? It's a channel. It's called the Pan-African Dating Show, I believe. Yeah. I've seen it. O'Shea mentioned a couple of things about it behind the scenes before he started it, and so I'm aware of it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're gonna critique that, and so if O'Shea, if he is watching, this is fair use. We're using it for education, but we will critique some points. This is actually, he don't need my promotion, but I'm gonna give him some free promotion, because for men that are looking for viable outcomes, Africa might be a good channel. So guys, y'all go check that channel out if you're looking for an African wife, and we will be critiquing some key points on this particular show. In general, how are African women or Ghanaian women equipped to help a man become a better man? I think you talked about it in part with duty and service, but in general, if she's acculturated properly, if she continues to adhere to the customs of our ancestors, if she's disciplined enough not to be influenced by the West, how can a Nigerian or Ghanaian woman help a man become better? And I asked the question because my niece just got married. Her husband is from Ghana. He's from Accra. And I'm going to show you guys a clip of that in a minute. But she just had a little son, and so she's officially what I call a recalibrated African. She's a recalibrated African, because black folks in America, we're from the African diaspora. Our bloodlines intersect many countries. Not just one country, but we can trace our bloodline back to many countries in Africa. From Nigeria to Ghana, to Cameroon, Congo, to Sierra Leone, to Gambia. And I'm going to do a show at some point with Dr. Neil, too. He was actually in Senegal. And Dr. Neil, if you're watching, if you can pop on, fine. If not, we'll do it. I will dedicate a show to you so you can talk about the intricacies of an American man traveling abroad to Senegal dealing with women. But you got to hear live from the greatest state in the Union, the Tar Heel State, Ike Ogami. I'm talking about the variances and nuances of the African woman and the African experience. So I break that down for me, brother. Break it down to the audience. How can a Ghanaian or Ghanaian woman or / Nigerian woman, if she's disciplined to custom and tradition, help a man become better, in your opinion?
So we hear a lot women say when they try to, over in the West, a certain type of woman would say that she can help a man build, right? She can help a man go from here to there, those types of things. And she has an idea in her head as to what that is. Okay. Now, it is completely different, though, from what I'm about to describe. The answer to your question would be, she's adhering to customs, traditions, and so on and so forth. And then how does that contribute to a man then, becoming better? A huge part of it is what she doesn't do. A huge part of it is in the negative. Mm-hmm. If I were to contrast again, a lot of times what that certain type of woman in the West is saying about how she's going to help a man has to do with some positive action she thinks that she's going to be doing, right? She's going to be suggesting this, saying that, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. But in reality, the fact that you have a woman who has completely removed because of her adoption, again, as you're saying, and sticking to the traditional roles that she has put upon herself, she's going to take a particular aspect of life that you would otherwise be worried about or responsible for out of that. So your needs in that regard, be they conjugal all the way and home domesticated related all through, that is removed from you having to worry about that, right? So it's like, okay, cool. Now there's peace, okay? And again, peace from the perspective of a woman in relation to a man is about a lot about what she doesn't do. It's not about she's not bringing peace. Okay, women don't bring peace. That's not what they're known for, right? So it's a question of her not raising war. It's the main thing, right? So it's not about her bringing peace, because that be his peace bullshit is bullshit. He's peaceful already. So it's already quite peaceful when you found him. Don't bring your shit. Don't bring your shit. Take away the aspects of, as I just mentioned, of the domestic life that he would otherwise be worried about. Then those are the first aspects on the negative side. Okay, there's going to be some positive things too in terms of things that she's going to actually do, right? And I would look, Proverbs 31 does a great summary of all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
The Proverbs 31 woman is a very traditional woman. She's a woman that, but what encapsulates, besides the home and domestic things I just mentioned earlier, and not being a freaking vulture trying to kill you in your own house, what encapsulates that is a certain amount of economic savvy, because you're going to need that as part of the whole. I mean, we may know the root word of economy and economics. It's about the house, right? It's about taking care of a household. That's what anyways. But in order for her to be able to do this, those virtues of she knew to see that plot of land and buy it and then cultivate it, right? So good management, okay, and good suggestions in the realm of economic savvy, understanding how to keep a storehouse well, using the language now of Proverbs, right? But what does that all amount to? It is knowing, okay, how to be more of a long-term person than just satisfying her typically more short-term bias, right? So looking long-term, understanding, okay, the future, the kids, the legacy, and all that economic savvy that comes along with it, right? Which now it's on an individual level, because you can have all these women trained out there in the culture, but the Proverbs 31 dimension of measuring is then an additional one. You go out there and then you try to find that she has this level of economic savvy. So again, first of all, it's about what she's not going to be doing, right? She's not going to be bringing hell to your table. And a big part of the reason why this not raising hell occurs is because of the separation of roles. Good fences make good neighbors, to be very simplistic about it, right? When we have separate roles, we're not going to be getting into conflict. If you are a NASCAR guy and I'm a biker who's not interested in that at all, I'm You know, I'm a biker, and maybe I even like some bike races, right? We're not going to be arguing with each other. It's two NASCAR guys that are on opposite teams or whatever. Like, if I'm not into American football, and in other words, when we're separate, the chances of mimetic rivalry, competition, and all that kinds of stuff doesn't arise. It's not a crazy thing. It's almost physical. You can imagine, right? You know, if you don't bring the balls together, there's not going to be friction, right? So as a result of this separation, that peace then exists, okay? And also as a result of that separation, different tasks are being taken care of. And if a man is, on his game, the fact that that aspect has been taken off away from him will go a long way. And then on an individual basis, I'll add that whole Proverbs 31 aspect of economic savvy.
Yeah, no doubt. What would you say, customs, what are the positives? You talked about in part about the Proverbs 31 woman, but what are the positives in general about dating African women? Tim Howard said that some say that African women, especially the ones in Nigeria, are really no different than America. I would say that's true. I would guess that's true in part. And I always tell men that regardless of where you go, a woman is a woman at her hard drive or at her base nature. At her base nature, a woman is going to be a woman, meaning she won't security, she won't protection, she won't provision. And if she's not disciplined, she would try to usurp your power as a man. And she might also minimize your importance of masculinity because she see you as weak, which is part of what some theologians would call original sin. It goes back to Genesis. She will have a desire for a husband and he will rule over her. But before we get into that, guys, y'all get the likes up, please. Go check out Ike. If you have not donated to the channel, donate to the channel. Shout out to my man Shocks with a $9 super sticker earlier. Ike and I both are content creators. We're both professional men. He is a engineer. I am a therapist. And if you know anything about content creation and trying to work, it's not easy. But we do this to bring clarity and insight in a time where many times men are not getting their needs met. I put a lot of time in this show, guys. And so if you like what I'm doing, please donate to the channel. If you don't have any money to share, just share the content. Share it with 5 to 10 guys. Let's get the stream up. And let's have a conversation because this is a comprehensive show. And this is a show that you're hearing from a native Nigerian talking about the nuances of dating, marriage, and relationships from the motherland.
Comment on what Tim Howard is saying enough, because he brings good points. And it's the points that I try to kind of preemptively highlight when I mentioned, well, there's still something called the nature of a woman. You mentioned that, you highlighted that. And that, by the way, also, there are no angels anywhere, right, in the world.
Right.
So it is in the man's nature to, well, let me put it this way. There are dark aspects of a man's nature, mainly leading to physical violence, right? There's dark aspects of a feminine nature, mainly leading to emotional manipulation and psychological violence, right? Now, you're just playing to their strengths there, right? You got upper body strength, you just go and you do that. You don't have that, you figure out some other way. So when you're still living here on earth, okay, every religious doctrine will tell you, hey, watch out for that thing called sin, watch out for that thing called human beings and the evil in the world. You open your eyes, you look at the news, and you see it every day around you. So there's going to be always a certain percentage of people that have fallen to the darker side of their nature, a particular percentage of the time, right? That kind of a thing. So there is no freaking Eden anywhere, right? So that I think that just another way of highlighting what I was saying earlier about maybe a fantasy romanticization of something that should never be done. However, what is the reality? Because the reality is a statistical one, right? It's not 0 or 1. It's like, hey, over here, the land is way more plentiful with the particular type of thing you're looking for. Okay, rather than say, oh, well, it's just like, well, yeah, it might over here maybe it's 50-50 good bad, right? But you're over where you are, it's like 95-5.
Right. It's the odds. The odds of finding tradition is a lot higher than the odds of finding here in America. It doesn't mean that Nigerian or West African women or women from the diaspora are perfect. They're not. But we're looking at the odds, and also we're looking at the level of cultural adaptation, but also acculturation and assimilation, which are key components to having a healthy relationship. And so it's sad or safe to say that many women in the West have lost their identity as it relates to helping a man become the better version of himself. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. And shout out to James Turner. I'm sure you'll acknowledge his super chat, $20 pretty soon. But I don't know if you know the divorce rate in Nigeria. Do you know that number?
I don't know it. I don't know what the divorce rate number is, but tell me.
It is an uncanny figure when you hear it. People usually don't believe it. They're like, really? It's 0.5%.
Are you serious?
You can Google it right now. You can Tim Howard, Kaizoran Empire, James Turner, everyone in the chat, you can go ahead and you can Google divorce rate in Nigeria. 0.5%. Still mostly filed by.
That is low.
Yeah, low. So it's a good example of illustrating, good way of illustrating the statistical truths. Okay, mm-hmm. It is 0.5%. Given our understanding of nature, whom files the most divorces? Still, regardless, it's still women. Women file about 80% of that number, right?
Yes.
So it's not about the women was. It's like but it's 0.5%.
90% for educated women. Hold tight. Let me send James a special shout out. And James, at some point, brother, if you can tap in for a few minutes. I know I got to go at some point. James was in South Africa recently, and we'll talk with James about his South African experience. Shout out to my man James Turner for that $20 super sticker, James Turner. And because of that, and that's a deal, right, James Turner. And because of that, brother, you are.
That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right?
The number one sponsor, James Turner, of this stream. Hold tight.
It's the money.
Go ahead. You were saying about the 1% and the powers of getting a Nigerian woman. Break it down to the audience, brother.
Okay, so a 1% divorce rate means what? Okay, it doesn't mean that life is a bed of roses. It doesn't mean that the marriage was quote unquote happy in the Western way of looking at it. It doesn't mean that everybody was having all your emotional and whatever psychological / whatever needs that first world problems like to emphasize. It doesn't mean that all those were being satisfied. It simply means that the duty of not breaking up the family was number one still. Right. It doesn't mean that people didn't cheat on each other, both the man and even the woman. Okay. It doesn't mean any of these things, by the way. Okay. It doesn't mean that maybe somebody didn't have some illegitimate child here. It doesn't mean any of that. All that's still going on. Okay. All that kind of stuff is still going on, but the duties, okay, are still kind of held high. So it's an interesting kind of a perspective. Once you're done. So it looks, in other words, there's a seeming contradiction in what I'm painting, right? So I just mentioned it in the macro level. Let's go down to the individual level. This one Nigerian woman, what does she look like while she's dealing with all this chaos, but still saying, I'm not going to leave, right? What does that look like? Before we paint the full picture, there's an aspect of West African women in general that I think I should point out. West African women are rambunctious, more so than East African women, right?
Right.
East African women are, more calm, dainty. East Africa, you have Rwanda, Tanzania, Kenya, Eritrea, Ethiopia,
South Africa.
One can begin to kind of visualize and think. It's generally more calm, more reserved. They demur more and all that kind of stuff. West African women more rambunctious and all that kind of stuff. But the thing is, the rambunctiousness is simply, it's like when you meet someone who's just exuberant, you're just vivacious. They like to be a little loud. They're just louder than other people. Let's just say Italians, for example. Right? They talk more with their hands. They do all this kinds of stuff. But you don't judge. If you judge it from a Western standard, right? They're already starting at level 6. But it's like, no, you have to recalibrate. Okay, recalibrate your tool and take that level 6 down to what their 0 is. So the 0 of a West African, okay. Someone mentioned in the chat, well, Nigerians are hustlers, both men and women. That's true. So generally speaking, the temperament is distributed. East African men are also more chill. Okay. So right. West African women are rambunctious, just like West African men. So that's their 0. So when you come in and you look at it, and you may be a little confused, like, but these women seem a little crazy. Like, what do you mean they're more feminine and blah, blah, blah? There's a different 0 that they're starting from. So she's out there being crazy and all that kind of stuff, but she still knows her role. By crazy, I just mean, again, just it's a personality. It's like someone from New York or like an Italian, that kind of thing. Okay. She's going to be louder or talk more or whatever. Okay. But the fact that her duty as a woman and her place, she will not break that code of, let's say, of breaking up the family because of the enormous amounts of shame, the weight of the cultural doctrine that still it's still a very, the number speaks for itself, right? 0.5%, right? So this is not a place where you go in and you have a fantasy of what this person is like, how they behave. It's like, no, you don't have no context for it. You're coming from a place where divorce is really much higher than that, right? And where the idea of what happiness looks like is very different, very confused. Basically done by Disney, okay, the happiness marketers, and the happily ever after model is a Disney fantasy in a place where there's a 0.5% divorce rate. And also, by the way, because you could say, oh, maybe women are just locked up, maybe it's like Somalia or maybe some kind of Arab state or something like that. It was like, well, it's 0.5 because they can't leave. That's not true of Nigeria, right? So Nigeria has a low, plus it's not like the women are chained up. No, these are West African women that have been free for a long time. And by free, I mean West African women have always been within public space in terms of commerce. Right. They control the selling and the buying of stuff. That's always been the case, right? They're not, so they've always been free, but so it's not like, oh, well, you just lock them up. So no, they're not locked up. They're in a place where they're free to leave, but they don't. So what does that look like? That does not look like a fairy tale. It looks like an overcoming in spite of all the craziness of life, right? It's not an absence of the craziness of life. It's a fact that you hold the duty higher in spite of that. So that's the kind of partner that you're more likely to get in the West African women, is someone that will hold duties higher.
Right. Well, I don't like that word. I know people use the word partner interchangeably. Some just mean,
yeah, gotcha.
But I tend to, my woman's not my partner. She's my wife, and I'm the head of that relationship. And it doesn't mean she doesn't have a voice in the relationship. But I think we've been so indoctrinated subconsciously to use terms like partner that it's caused men to come in relationships being egalitarian. My man Radical Homie.
I'm sorry, I have to say something. Someone mentioned the economic reasons. The economic reasons are a typical. Oh, it's not an illogical thing to posit or to speculate that they're not leaving because of economic reasons, right? But that's really not it. It's like, and let me just dwell a little bit on this. I'm responding to someone in particular, right? Yeah. So, sir, I can't read your name right now, but your point is 100% valid from a hypothesis standpoint. You're like, okay, people make decisions based on incentives, economic incentives. But the same kind of error is made, let's say, in the United States when you look at certain places whom, quote unquote, don't vote their economic interests, right? But they vote for Jesus. Let's just put it that way, to kind of just be caricature about it. Like, they're like, you're not going to take my gun. Obama talked about, well, they just don't want to give up their guns and their God. I don't get it. I'm giving them all this money. They don't want to give up their guns and their God. This aspect of human nature, I think, is what particular hypotheses, such as the economic one, tends to overlook. I'm saying that, no, 0.5 is not a result of people just, no. Amongst the 99% of people who stay in their marriages, there's a lot of women whom can just do, or probably do better off by themselves, okay? So the reason is the heavy social pressure as a result of the norms. It's the normative power that keeps people in the marriage, just like also that keeps people voting for Jesus or guns and gods rather than for bread. As it says in the Bible, right? Man does not live by bread alone. So the bread hypothesis typically does not does not take account for these other rather powerful aspect of human nature.
Radical Normie asked a question. He said that West African women are the most traditional in Africa, the Westernized. What do you say about that, Ike, real quick?
So the data in terms of, let's say, the if we stick with the 0.5%, that's one of the lowest in the whole of Africa, right? So in that regard, it is true. If you go to Kenya, for example, East Africa, the number starts to rise up.
Oh,
right?
really? I'm shocked.
Yeah. Yes. So there's a traditional, yes, but then when there's always several dimensions that people conflate. That's just the truth of any kind of conceptual landscape and everything that we do whatsoever. Now, I'm talking about traditional versus what we may call traditionally feminine. Okay. An Eastern woman is more traditionally feminine. Okay. But she's not as traditional in terms of upholding traditions.
I see your point. Right. I see your point. Right. Excellent point. Excellent breakdown. She's traditional in nature, but she's not necessarily. She's feminine in nature, but not necessarily traditional in culture. She's, more or less, the West African woman adheres to the highest pinnacle of traditionalism and custom. But she might have a few pegs down in her femininity. But whereas the East African is at a higher pinnacle when it comes down to femininity. But when it comes down to adhering to traditional culture, she might be down the pegs. It's almost like what the trade-offs are. When you think about the trade-offs, which trade-offs, in your opinion, are more beneficial? On the femininity or the customs and tradition, in your opinion?
I take custom over femininity for any long-term endeavor, because it's, I even if you're starting a business with somebody, right? It is the degree to which they adhere to certain values, what their non-negotiables are. That is the main thing, as opposed to certain more aesthetic style-like aspects of them, okay, that you may or may not like. So again, where femininity is on the aesthetic end of things, aesthetic style, like how does she walk, how does she carry herself, blah 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 blah, right? Versus, well, what are the things that are her non-negotiables, the things that you can trust on that will not change no matter what. So that is always the way to go for any kind of long-term endeavor, whether you're starting a business or you're gonna marry someone. So I would say 100%, if you're gonna trade off some traditional femininity type stuff, but you are holding on to the tradition, then that's great. Now, however, so if you're a East African man, or you're some other kind of man, and you prefer the East African aesthetic, there's still a way of going there and then finding more traditional women. How? Easy. Okay. A lot of Muslims in East Africa. Okay. If you want to go that route. Okay. If you go in the Muslim community then in East Africa, then all of a sudden, because of the structure, then there's going to be a high level of the tradition is going to come back. So there's always ways of moving parameters and finding exactly the right match for what you are. But if I then go a step with another iteration, it's like, well, why wouldn't I? What if you ask me, would I go to East Africa, say I get a certain type of femininity that I'm looking for, and then I hack the traditional thing by finding a Muslim woman? Okay, I actually preferred the rambunctious temperament of a West African. Now, this is purely personal. That's just because I'm a West African dude. I'm super crazy, right? So I like, in other words, I might hurt an East African woman in certain ways of my being, my characteristics, the things I may say. You get what I'm saying, right? But for a West African, that'll be more. It'll bounce off her easier, right? A West African is a better dance partner for me, is what I'm kind of saying. So ultimately, I would pick. That's why I would still end up in West.
Yeah, that's a good point. Khazarian Empire. I'll drop the link in the feed, man. I want to ask Ike some questions first. I'll drop the link on the back end if you guys want to come through and talk about this. And if you guys have not donated to the channel, donate to the channel. What would you say, Ike? How traditional? So we know that Westernization and liberalism have impacted foreign women. to the point that some have lost out on customs and traditions. When you look at the women from the biggest countries in Africa, cities in Africa like Lagos or the Delta State, how have liberalism impacted those women? Or do you see it more so here in America when they transfer to America?
There's a general idea of, oh, you meet this woman in Africa, you court her, you bring her over to the West, and then she turns into something else. That's
Right.
one aspect. And then there's also, you go over to Africa and you see all these women and they're all kind of westernized. So growing up in Africa, the idea of westernization, the idea of, and it's a question of a global media marketplace, right? And a situation where things are kind of free. So you're not in a communist China where they've blocked Western media or something. Right? Western media is piping in, right? And media from all over the place. Media from, Bollywood is huge, right? Growing up, Bollywood has always been huge. So you get the Indian stuff coming in, you get the Chinese stuff coming in, you get the American stuff coming in. The American stuff is huge. And
Right.
people put on the aesthetic, or American marketing is still the best. In other words, what I mean by American soft power, American cultural influence is still the best, right? People want to be American. People are not trying to be Chinese. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, people are not really trying to be French like that. People want to be America. They want the McDonald's and the Coca-Cola and the whatever, right? They want America. America's marketing is spot on. Hollywood is great. So you should go into any freaking place in the world understanding that that is the law of the land, that there's going to be a certain percentage of people, and it's going to be the mass. Again, you have to always look at things as a bell curve. The majority, the average, is going to follow the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance in a global marketplace of media is the American model, is the Hollywood model. So if you're going places looking for average people, the average person in London or Lagos or New York are very similar. Okay, like in a certain sense. Now, this is the thing that's kind of difficult about statistics, right? Let me just make a little kind of pedantic point here that I think Jordan Peterson used to always talk about. The difference in statistics, people make this basic mistake about comparing the averages versus comparing outliers. So the difference in terms of aggressiveness between a man and a woman, average man and average woman, is small.
Right.
Okay. There are many women way more aggressive than men. Okay. But when you go to the outliers of whom is most aggressive, it's all men. Go to who's killing all the people and then is in death row, it's all men. Okay. So a lot of times when you're looking at, let's say, in these cultural dimensions of like, okay, Hollywood is out there infiltrating everybody, so I'm just going to go and start looking for the average person. The average person is more or less going to be the Hollywood person, okay? Or the person whom at least puts on the persona of, because that's the accepted one, right? Well, everybody is swiping on this app, so I guess I need to swipe on the app too. Everyone is acting like this and they all want to be slay queens, so I guess I have to be a slay queen too. We know how human nature is. That's going to be there. So pointing out that is like pointing out that the fact that the sky is blue. But hopefully I've given a description. Hence, to a more direct kind of 0-1 answer to the question is, it's more in the West. Obviously, the West is the source of this type of stuff. But if you're going out and you're looking for just average general behavior in average general places, it's like going to a club or something. The average club goer is the average club goer worldwide. Whether they go to clubs in New York or Vegas or Accra, they're club goers, if that makes sense. So that's not what you're looking for. Okay, that's not where the concentration of viable product exists. That's not what's making the averages different in these two countries. You're going to you might as well be going to the same place. So, for example, I mentioned in East Africa, you're like, oh, going to the Muslim community, for example. That's very, very different from a club, right? So a lot of people who go and think that you're going to find a different kind of club goer. I don't care if you go to Japan or Vegas, a club goer is a club goer.
Right. Shout out to my man Top Gun for the $5 super sticker. Thank you, Top Gun, for that $5. Thank you for the love and support, always showing love. We're going to get into it deep, Ike. I want to show you guys something real quick. As I told you guys, my niece got married recently. Her husband's from from Ghana. And I'm going to show you guys something real quick. And
how dare you compare a a gun or mistake. No, oh shit! No shade. Sorry, yeah, it's your family member.
No, you fine, man. Yeah. Her husband's from Ghana, from Accra, I believe. And we're gonna pull this little click up real quick. And yeah, guys, I got to get this internet.
This is a Ghanaian wedding, as my little niece is about to get married. This is how we do it from the continent, the home of our ancestors. I say it's looking good. This is Ghanaian. This is what culture looks like, guys. This is culture.
All right, hold tight. So, gotta make sure I don't get no copyright strikes. But you know, I gotta believe your wife is from Ghana, I believe, right?
Correct.
And so, what would you say is the greatest difference? What would you say is the greatest difference, Ike, in a woman? Oh, actually, here's the clip. What is the greatest difference in a woman from Ghana compared to
the Tar Heel State? This is a Ghanaian wedding, as my little niece is about to get married.
Hold tight. I keep dropping. Hold tight. But what would you say after I play this clip is the biggest difference? And I want you to keep that, let that percolate in your head. But the Ghanaian versus
the Tar Heel State. This is a Ghanaian wedding, as my little niece is about to get married. This is how we do it from the continent, the home of our ancestors. I say it's looking good. This is Ghanaian. This is what culture looks like, guys. This is culture. This is real culture. I'm an overcomer. I want to know. My jolie, oh my jolie.
Yeah. Every time I come around you, baby girl, something doesn't feel the same. You said that I'm changing, but it's really you. I see how you play those games. Wifey type for a main man. A queen can make moves, a king can't. Snatch you up, now you taking. Gave you bricks, now you building a wall up, wall up. Lately you and I've been all love, all love. I don't know what's up with our love, our love. You forgetting all about us, oh. My jolie, oh my jolie. Where are you? When I need you the most, you still MIA. This is murder, heart is melting. Girl, you got me. Called your bluffing, made you something.
The difference, like, what is the difference in a Ghanaian woman versus a Nigerian woman, in your opinion? What is the difference in the culture, the style, even though they're both from West Africa? But what made you go Ghanaian versus dealing with the women from your own native country?
Okay.
No
I like
cap.
to say I'm gonna pull out a statement like Dave Chappelle. I stand with my, I don't know whom I'm anti or pro, whatever I gotta be to cover myself. And then, but no, generally what I like to do is I like to compare Ghana and Nigeria as follows. So New York is in the East Coast, right? Connecticut is kind of close to New York. It's kind of smaller, a little bit more rural in a certain regard. People are a little bit more polite over there and so on. Nigeria is New York in many regards. Dense population, kind of crazy hustle mentality, and all those kinds of things. Way more urban and all that. Then you have Connecticut, which would be like Ghana. and people are more demurred, they're more deferential in their manner and outlook on life. And typically, if you are like a Nigerian type, you find a lot of peace in dealing with, let's say, a Ghanaian woman. The reverse is the case. Obviously, it's like you're gonna have. Shout out to my Ghanaian brothers out there, but a lot of Ghanaian women want Nigerian men, right? For the same
really?
obvious reasons, right?
What is that about? What is that about?
It's like, well, the reason why certain type of women want a guy from New York, why they want the guy that's got he's got a certain kind of energy and a certain kind of swag, a certain kind of go-getter. He's the hustler, he's aggressive, he's bigger for sure, taller, all that stuff, right? It's not complicated.
Right, they like that Nigerian swag, man. Like I got, man. My bloodline, goes back to Nigeria. Like Isaac Hayes say, I stand accused. I stand accused, man. So Nigerian men are known for having that je ne sais quoi. They got that swag. And Nigerians are very fastidious. Nigeria is one of the fastest growing countries in the world, densely populated. Some of the most intelligent. People look up to Nigerians as being the pinnacle of intellect, style, class, and progress. Is that fair to say?
Well, if you, I won't.
I mean, I don't know. I've heard that they not saying that. Like, I know Rwanda's on the uptick, and Ghana is no slouch either. Ghana is on point. Shout out to my man, Dr. Neil. Doc said, "Don't sleep on Africa." And I'm gonna do a show with Doc at some point. If you want to come do a little later, he can come do. But he said, "Don't sleep on Africa." He was in Gambia. Shout out to my man, Dr. Neil, for that $10 super sticker.
That's a
Doc, I really
deal, right?
appreciate
That's
it.
a deal, right?
And that's a deal, right?
That's a bet, right? That's a deal,
but
right?
after
That's
this,
a deal, right?
this little playlist go through. What's the difference, man? What's the difference? What made you choose one over the other?
So now it wasn't like I was sitting there and saying, okay, let me choose one over the other. Life never happens that way, right?
Okay, all right, fair enough.
But what I said earlier applies, right? Which is typically you're like, okay, no particular one culture, okay, or group of people genetically will ever have both the masculine and the feminine being equally at peak form, let's say, or like equally desirable. Like, for example, I talk about East versus West Africa, right? You go to East Africa and you talk about aesthetically more traditional in presentation and all that kind of stuff. Women, more it's not traditional, sorry, feminine women. But the men, okay, have to live with being also seen as more feminine, right? Asian women versus Asian men is another example. So Asian women are desired by, white men, let's say. But Asian men are not desired. Well, why?
Right.
Because the features that make you, if I'm gonna throw some, genetic dust at your group, and if the features are mainly favor the feminine, the men are gonna have to pay for that, right? So Nigeria, I'm gonna throw some dust at Nigerians, and it just so turns out that on average, it favors the masculine. In other words, the Nigerian attitude favors masculinity as defined right now and for the past ever since we've been around being human beings, right?
Right.
So that's the thing. You never have this kind of culture where it's like, oh, the men and the women are both like, no. So, but a slight deviation, not very different because it's still West Africa and all that kind of stuff. A slight deviation, so you still get the West African rambunctiousness, which I find important because, for me, again, as a West African person, because I need somebody that can actually tolerate that's not going to break, right? So, and the West African women are kind of tough that way, but just step over to Ghana and they're more traditionally more feminine, but then the Ghanaian men suffer, right? As a result of that, they're a little smaller, a little bit more wimpy. Shout out to my Ghanaian friends. So that is the dynamic here at play at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah. They want a masculine man. They want somebody they got that Nigerian swag like me, because they say Nigerians tend to be bigger. And they tend to have that machismo, that the women like, man, But they be stunting, man. James Turner be stunting, They be hating on brothers like myself. They got that smooth those strong Nigerian genes in the gap too. But I'm gonna show you a clip, Ike, real quick, and we're gonna break this thing.
I'm sorry. Let me mention one thing. Somebody said something that's actually quite good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, shall we say, West Africans and a certain type of, let's say, white people, because white people are very different. Okay, in terms of, like, you know, there's a Germanic person, and then there's a more Russian type white. There's very different types of people. Okay, but both these groups are the ones where this kind of almost parody in terms of masculine and feminine actually being expressed almost in peak form. So again, if you look at America, both blacks in America and whites in America, or where you're like, the man is desirable and the woman is generally desirable, right? So that is an interesting thing in terms of this distribution of, you know, you can't have it perfect. But I still think though that anyways, I still think that overall in general, the West African kind of temperament does favor masculinity a little bit more, right? But I think that these groups actually are the ones that kind of balance out the most.
Yeah. I would say that the West Africa probably is the paragon. I'm going to say it's the heart of Africa in so many ways. I mean, when you talk about you know, like what are those warriors in Africa called, man? I can't think of the name of them, but they're very muscular. I can't think of the name of them, but they're from Africa. They're real big and muscular. I don't know what country they're from, but I know it's called the Dingo. It's the Dinka. I don't know if it's the Dinka.
The Dinka people over there in the Mali areas in Sudan. The really black people.
Right. Those are from the Sudan, but there are some also where they're just built. They're very strong. You know, I can't think of the name of. But anyway, but point taken. But Dr. Neil said don't sleep on on Africa. And he's correct. And we're gonna do a show at some point. We're gonna break down the tales of West Africa and also where he was in Senegambia. But I want to show you something, Ike, and let's break this down. This is fair use, guys. Fair use. Me and Ike gonna break this down real quick. Hold tight. And the best countries to find a loyal woman, a loyal wife, African wives, and African women. And one was up there, so let's look at it.
They are interested in the peoples, tribes, and women of Africa. Companion to be from Africa. Countries to find a loyal wife.
All right, once again, fair use, fair use.
10. Best African countries to find a loyal wife. So, you are crazy about African girls. You want your wife or companion to be from Africa, because you think that these women are the best in the world, right? You are not wrong. But what is the best country to find that wife of your dreams or companion in? Today's video will answer that question. Africa is the largest continent of our planet after Eurasia. Many scientists are still interested in the culture and etymology of the African continent. They are interested in the peoples, tribes, and women of Africa. African ladies are absolutely contradictory. Some study, work, build their own businesses, while others live in tribes, have their traditions, and are absolutely isolated from the benefits of civilization. And yes, they don't need these benefits. Modern African girls are beautiful and charming. They have their historical characteristics and national customs. Let's analyze interesting facts about African girls and determine the best country to meet that special woman in Africa according to Positive Africa. Before we continue, permit me welcome you to Positive Africa. Here on this channel, our core focus is to showcase the positive face of Africa out to the entire world by means of information and education. Consider subscribing and turning on the post notification bell so you never miss out.
This right here is one of my 18 audiobooks that I own. It made 82 sales last month on
any of our videos. 4. Number 10, South Africa. Even though South Africa is located on the African continent, there are not only dark-skinned beauties among the local charming ladies. There are also girls with white skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes. Throughout South Africa, a bride plays a special role, and is treated with
Now, James Turner, he was in South Africa recently. Dr. Neil, the link has been dropped. Dr. Neil was in Senegambia. But the link has been dropped, Dr. Neil, so you can pop in, brother. Got it for you. But South Africa, Ike, has been seen as a destination. I want you to keep some mental notes. My man James Turner was in South Africa recently, and he talked about the beauty and the tradition of South Africa. But keep listening.
great respect because she is the connection between the ancestors and an unborn child. A man is solely responsible for almost all decisions in the family. You don't have to go to Africa to meet a girl from South Africa. You might get completely overwhelmed and confused by the beauties here once you arrive. Instead, you can use the internet and start chatting with African brides online until you are ready to move on to the next stage of the relationship.
So, Ike, in 2 minutes, Ike, what do you know about South African women, the beauty, the femininity, customs, and tradition? Real quick, 2 minutes. What do you know about South African women as we get through this video?
Oh, well, I know that just some of the most beautiful women in the world are within South Africa, right?
Mm-hmm.
That whole general area. When it comes to Westernization, however, highly Westernized in terms of if we look at those statistics again, this is not the place where you find the richest harvest, if you will, right? Highly Westernized for obvious reasons, right? It's not like complicated why the white man has been there and still is there, right? But hey, the women of certain tribes, which I believe some people know, the light skinned one with the great assets and everything. They're
the horsing.
Yeah, they're pretty. And these are also women that tend to actually be a little bit more traditional, right? Even though they've been highly Westernized. But a kind of traditional, similar to like a Nigerian woman, for example, in terms of holding up certain normative standards of duty and such.
Out to my man Bob, he said that is the average height of Nigerian men really 5'5"? I don't know. But guys, if you got any questions, send me. I'll do it. We can do a super chat or a cash app if you got any questions. But Dr. Neil, the link has been dropped, brother. Please come in because we want to add you to the stream. I did send a link to your Facebook account. Let's finish looking at the eye and break this thing down. Hold tight.
Means of information and education. Consider subscribing and turning on the post notification. Number 10, South Africa. Even though South Africa is located on the African continent, there are not only dark-skinned beauties among the local charming ladies. There are also girls with white skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes. Throughout South Africa, a bride plays a special role and is treated with great respect because she is the connection between the ancestors and an unborn child. A man is solely responsible for almost all decisions in the family. You don't have to go to Africa to meet a girl from South Africa. You might get completely overwhelmed and confused by the beauties here once you arrive. Instead, you can use the internet and start chatting with African brides online until you are ready to move on to the next stage of the relationship. Number 9, Rwanda. Traveling in Rwanda is pleasant, not so much because of the low prices, but because of beautiful girls. The official language is English, so there should be no problems communicating with Rwandan girls. They willingly get acquainted with men. As in the rest of Africa, the family is quite important for them. Therefore, girls are loyal to their men.
Sir,
Doc, I want you to take mental notes about Rwanda. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead, Doc.
I sent you. So I sent you a link.
Did you?
Also, just and it just so happens to be about Rwanda, and then this video was going through the Rwanda thing. I think that there's some. There's some.
I got it.
It's highly underrated.
Yes, Burundi. Yes, I knew about the Burundi women. Yes, Burundi women are considered not only gorgeous, but they're very loyal, very hardworking, very curvy. Yes, we're going to see that as well. I knew about the Burundi women. Burundi women are. Where's Burundi? That's Central Africa. Ike.
No, I think Burundi is right next to Rwanda, so that will be east. Well, but thing is, going east into central, that whole, whatever, it's like, okay, when does east become central? It's not all the way east, but yeah.
They said Burundi's women are not only hardworking, but they're extremely loyal. And to the single men that are listening, if you got your money up, if you're working hard, if you feel like women here in America that feel like $75,000 is not enough, you will be a God king in Central Africa, in West Africa, wherever. They'll treat you like a man. You don't have to lower your standards and lower your value. And not only will you get a feminine woman, but you most likely will get a woman that's traditional, not promiscuous, don't have kids out of wedlock, a bunch of kids by multiple men, and a woman that can help you live longer. So let's finish looking at this link real quick, guys. We're going to continue to break it down. Hold tight.
It is customary to have many children here. Therefore, if you want to date an African beauty, be prepared that your future family will be very large. Number 8. South Sudan. Of course, South Sudan is not the safest place to travel, but love can overcome all obstacles. This country is home to some of the most beautiful African women who, for the most part, speak English, a language that is studied anywhere in the world. Residents of South Sudan willingly get acquainted with foreigners, hoping to get married and leave the unstable state where military coups replace one another. In marriage, they respect their husbands and don't cheat on them, because they understand that the family is a holy thing, and it can't be destroyed.
Powerful.
Number 7. Morocco. Women from Morocco are very beautiful by nature. Almost all Moroccan women have thick eyelashes, dark skin, and large eyes. Moroccans get married after 18 years. A bride doesn't need the consent of her father to start a family. In relationships and marriage, they are loyal and always honor their husbands. But since polygamy is allowed in the country, many Moroccans are not averse to marrying a foreigner to be the only one for him. Visit Morocco, which is teeming with beauties willing to meet foreigners. The only problem is the Arabic language that is the official language here. You will have to use facial expressions and gestures, otherwise, communication might not work if you don't understand Arabic. Number 6. Ghana. Are you looking for the best country to marry a woman?
So, Doc, I want you to take notes on this because your wife is Ghanaian, and they give Ghanaian women a lot of props. And guys, if you're single, Ghanaian women are extremely curvy. Oh my goodness. They are extremely curvy to the single men. So if some of you single brothers don't have wives, Ghanaian women might be an option. Hold tight.
Here it is. Women of Ghana are extremely friendly and welcoming towards tourists. In addition, English is widely spoken throughout the country. Moreover, these ladies are so beautiful. Family is the main value in the life of a Ghanaian woman. Divorce in Ghana is considered a shame for a family, especially a woman. But the material side is often of paramount importance. A financially successful marriage becomes a priority for many girls and their mothers. They idolize their husbands. They don't cheat on their men and love them madly. Upon visiting the capital of the country, Accra, and meeting local beauties, you are unlikely to want to leave. Number 5. Congo. You will not be able to take your eyes off the local girls. The traditional upbringing of girls is based on a respectful attitude towards parents, older relatives, and other people in general. Compared to European or Asian women, African women are more relaxed. You can build a wonderful romantic relationship with them. When building relationships with Congolese women, it is important to remember that they have a completely different mentality than Western girls. Still, Congolese ladies are eager to get acquainted and communicate with foreigners. By the way, these women are very loyal and don't cheat on their men. Number 4. Tanzania. Tanzanian women are calm, slow, and relaxed. Family in Tanzania is the main value of a person, and therefore, they take its creation seriously and observe all traditions and rituals. It is customary to have many children here, even though on average, there are about 4 children in each family. Travelers should be prepared for increased attention. girls are ready to marry a European, an American, or a man from another African country. You can meet your love both in Tanzania itself, and on a dating site. But the second option is less effective since not everyone has the internet there. Therefore, it is best to get acquainted while traveling around the country. Number 3, Somalia.
Whoa, Somalia. So Somalia is number 3. Now, we got a young lady that's in the chat. Her name is Dua Mohammed. And she said, what about Somalia? So, dear, your country is number 3. She said, we are good women too. Those are East Africans. She said, we are very traditional and we take care of our men. She said, all he has to do is take care of the financial needs, but everything else that he tells us to do, we do not deny our men of anything. Wow, that's powerful. And that's the sad thing, Ike and Dr. Neil. You got men making $75,000. That's not enough. They take care of everything home. And these women in America, many of them say they can't rest in their femininity. He got to make $250,000. He got to make $500,000. And so this young lady is from Somalia, and she says, so Somali women are an option for men as well. And we're going to talk about that because I want to see you men win. I want to see some of you single men win. And if you can't find your wife here in America, then go abroad. She said, yay. So hold tight. Let's finish listening to the beautiful Somalian women in Eritrea. Hold tight.
Unfortunately, a reasonable percentage of men grow up to be bandits, pirates, leaving women alone. Women are responsible for how to feed their children and survive on their own. Parents may even sell their daughter to bandits or marry off in exchange for water or food. So, the number of marriages increases dramatically during a drought. Sadly, nearly half of Somali women are married before the age of 18. Therefore, girls will be happy if they meet a foreigner who will love and protect them, and in return, they will be the most devoted wives. Number 2, Kenya. This is probably the best African nationality to marry. In the capital Nairobi, girls are very stunning,
This script
and it
was
is
written by a
simply
Kenyan.
impossible to walk the streets so as not to pay attention to them. By the degree of extravagance, pretentious hairstyles, and outfits, Kenyan girls can easily compete for the first places in the world. Girls who live here take their families very seriously. Divorce is the greatest rarity. If you are a kind and friendly man, then dating in Kenya will be extremely interesting for you. What could be more beautiful than the love that originated between two interesting people? Number 1, Ethiopia. Travelers say that when you see a beautiful Ethiopian for the first time, your heart beats faster. They have chiseled shapes, these women are sculpted without any surgical interventions, and they are graceful as panthers and hot as a tropical night. In Ethiopia, although women's equality has been enshrined in legislation for more than 60 years, these laws don't work in reality. Single men and women share the same social status. But after marriage, a girl falls completely under the authority of her husband and his family. The legal age for marriage is 18. To start a relationship with an exotic beauty, it is not necessary to go to Africa for the thrill. It's much easier to find them on online dating sites. Now you know. From which country do you dream of finding the love of your life?
They have no rhythm though. All their dances
Share
are
with
just
us in the
jumps.
comments section, and don't.
All right, hold on, Doc. Hold on. All right, you're up there laughing. But we're gonna talk about Burundi real quick, and then I'm gonna let Doc bring it in because Doc has been traveling over the traverses of Senegal and Gambia here recently. Let me show you guys this clip. I've seen it before. But then I'm gonna let Doc and Ike finish the conversation. But Ike, based on what you're hearing, man, are you shocked that they put Ethiopia number 1? Are you shocked?
Well, I'm not shocked. Well, I think that this is a good kind of a general video. It's not meant to be deeply accurate.
Not exhaustive. Right. Mm-hmm.
Nor even some of the pictures that are shown, for example, are not accurate. Like, for example, for the South Sudan person, I believe. But it doesn't really matter in a sense in general because that's not the level of resolution for which this is meant, right? So we were talking about people who probably don't know anything about, So, and in that same regard, it makes sense that Ethiopia will be number 1 because I think that's what will be generally agreed upon before you break out into camps about whether or not you're, for example, where I would say, I don't really want. I think she's not as robust or strong, quite literally and figuratively, as the West African woman, and I want a stronger person, for example, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But yeah.
Right,
But other
right.
than that, it's fairly spot on for a general broadcast, if you will.
Yeah. The African tribe, they're called the Mandingos. I think the Mandingos are close to.
But that Burundi video, you got to play that if you get.
Yeah. I'm gonna play it. I've seen it before.
Yeah.
I've seen it before. But Doc, real quick, before I play the Burundi video, how would you like to answer the conversation? You were in Senegal and Gambia, and you said don't sleep on African women. I need you to qualify.
Yeah, how you guys doing?
How you doing, brother? Glad you were able to pop in.
Good. Yeah. Let me just say, man, this is an excellent conversation. Coach, we talked about this before you went on the air and everything like that.
Yes, sir.
And I'm happy that I was able to come through.
Mm-hmm.
When I say don't sleep on Africa, it's because we have this passport travel ideology that's very, very popular right now. And much of the passport content that we see all across social media deals primarily with other parts of the diaspora. So, I've talked a lot about Brazil, because I've been there and what have you. And you have other brothers who are part of passport / SYSBM, and they talk about Brazil, they talk about Colombia, Venezuela, various parts of South America, places where Spanish is spoken, as well as Portuguese and what have you. But you don't have a lot of passport content that deals primarily with the continent of Africa, and
Right.
I have to emphasize Africa because I think that the people in the passport community, and let me also say this, a lot of the passport content, you also have, brothers who are talking about different parts of Europe, Germany, they're talking about Poland, Sweden, Eastern and Western Europe, you understand? And there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? You
Right.
go where your preferences take you or what have you. But there are more than 1 billion people on the continent of Africa. Okay, and Africa is going to be the leader of the world in terms of human population, in terms of resources, in terms of so many things in the next 100, 200 years. You understand? And Africa is the beginning of everything. And so I find it personally problematic that Africa is not highlighted as a site for men who seek to travel and to broaden their horizons, to meet women and to experience culture, to connect with tradition, so on and so forth. And so that's why I say don't sleep on Africa. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. And this has been said about passport bros and the movement and what have you, about from outsiders, and it's not necessarily false. You know what I mean? There's a level of anti-blackness and even colorism that exists that we don't want to deal with. You understand? We have deeply ingrained stereotypes and myths about Africa that we don't want to acknowledge. And so when I say don't sleep on Africa, it's in the face of all of that. So I went to Africa for the very first time. I've been wanting to go for the bulk of my adult life, being someone who was shaped years ago by Black nationalism and later by Pan-Africanism, what have you. Africa has been something that I wanted to experience for a very, very long time. And back in June of this year, not too long ago, I took my first trip to Senegal, to Dakar in particular. and I spent 2.5 weeks in Dakar. And initially, I traveled with a group. I was there for 1 week with the group, and then for the rest of my stay there, I was by myself. And it was one of the best experiences that I had as a traveler, and just as a black man. And it was so profound and so impactful that I decided to go back to Senegal back in September, and I spent approximately 34 days in Senegal. Went there, and I went. I traveled on the eve of my birthday, which was September the 5th. My birthday was September the 6th, and I woke up. I literally woke up on a plane, Delta Airlines in Africa, and the first thing that I put on my Facebook post, I made a Facebook post, and I said, I woke up in Africa on my birthday. You understand? And that was the beginning of just a wonderful 34-day experience in Senegal, Dakar in particular. And while I was in Senegal, I took a trip to Gambia, spent several days in the Republic of Gambia. And going to Gambia was also a wonderful experience. And I met so many people there. So here's the thing, we're talking about West Africa. We're talking about parts of Africa that has been shaped profoundly by Islam, Islamic traditions, African Islam in particular. And I have to emphasize that because that is the one thing that stood out for me in my experience. And the one thing that shaped my entire experience in Africa was Islam and the structure that exists. Islam is not perfect anywhere in the world, but Islam in Africa is not the same Islam that you're going to find in the white parts of Africa, in the Arab parts of the world. Okay, and they have a different flavor. Islam is something I have studied. I'm not a Muslim, but I have always had profound respect for Islamic traditions and what have you. So I would just say that is the background for my experience of Africa and what I saw in terms of that culture and eating with and fellowshipping with Muslims, going to an event. I went to a city that's not far from Dakar called Touba. I went to an Islamic annual Islamic event that happens every year called the Magdal de Touba. And I was there for 3 days, and I just gathered with hundreds and hundreds of Muslims, men and women and families, and the experience was just overwhelming. I'll just say that.
Wow, right. And we're going to get deeper into it, man, when it comes down to femininity as well. I'm going to show this clip of Burundi. And I had already seen the clip that Ike showed to me, but we're going to play it again because some Burundi women are underrated as well. And I believe that's Central Africa, so hold tight.
Bold, black, proud, and smart. They are some of the most beautiful women in Africa, and you may find yourself falling in love at first sight. Let's look at a few reasons why these women are special. One, hardworking. Burundian women are literally workhorses. They enjoy working and providing for their families. Sometimes the man of the house may not even be working, but these women will not complain. She will work from dawn to sunset without complaining at all. What is amazing and strange is that she will still...
And guys, here's the difference real quick. I'm going to continue to play this, but here's the difference. These women are still feminine. These women from Burundi still work, and they still honor their family, honor tradition. But sadly, some women, not all, but many women in the West will say, well, I can't be feminine because I got to work. I can't rest in my femininity because I got to work. And when you look at our ancestors, the black women from the past, our grandmothers, those women, I was listening to TJ Randolph, and she was saying that how her mother, grandmother worked, but also still adhere to traditionalism. Just like a lot of men were sharecroppers and work. They worked the farms, they worked the fields, but they still did the maintenance around the house. But sadly, women in America have become so selfish and so entitled that any modicum of support for family tradition in the man is seen as slavery. But hold tight.
Allow the man to have this say in the home. Submissive. Whether you consider this a positive or a negative trait depends on your cultural background. Burundi society is very patriarchal, and women have been conditioned by the culture to respect and obey their men, sometimes to a fault. I think this may be a cultural barrier that holds back many Burundian women, but one cannot deny that this attribute is a recipe for a very peaceful marriage, at least within the African context.
And what people don't understand, guys, about submission, it just basically means to agree. People always see the word submission in a negative context. Even this woman, the editor, said they could be holding them back, but it doesn't, as long as there's healthy and mutual respect. We all submit, but we submit in different ways. He submits to honor, love, and protect her. She submits or agrees to honor and respect his headship as a man. It's a very beautiful and a powerful concoction if people understand the significance of it. Guys, do me a favor. I'm sharing this stream. Let's get the likes up. These kind of shows sadly trigger some folks. But I'm for male empowerment. I got Dr. Ron Neal in the house. He traveled with me to Brazil, but he's also traveled to West Africa. And I got a real Nigerian American brother, Ike Ogamian. So keep listening, guys. We're going to finish this conversation. Please share this stream, guys. Share it so we can get the subscribers up and also get the donations up. Thank you.
Manage to get a Burundian wife, rest assured that you will have peace of mind. This is in total contrast to Kenyan women who like to assert dominance in marriage to the mental detriment of their men. Three, majestically beautiful. A typical Burundian lady is tall, graceful, and has this air of innocence in her looks. She is full-bodied and has the curves in all the right places. She is blessed with a disarming smile and bright, sparkling eyes. If you treat her well, this beauty has a tendency to really blossom to angelic levels. So make sure you do. She is also beautiful on the inside too, and even the most beautiful one will not allow her beauty to diminish her humility. Four, resilient. Burundi has experienced numerous natural and man-made disasters, including a long civil war, genocides, devastating soil erosion, and a severe economic downturn. Burundian women have been the major victims of the effects of all this, but guess what? This has not dampened their capacity to love. If you are genuine, a Burundian woman will reciprocate accordingly. The trauma might still be there, but their tenacity is legendary. As clearly demonstrated, Burundian women are indeed gems, and one more reason why Africa should be proud. Thank you for watching. Please make sure you subscribe to Afro Artista Films for more.
All right, so you guys heard it. Guys, if you got any questions, donate to the channel. I will read your questions, but I will be limiting the stream for the sake of Ike's time and Dr. Neal's time, and also my time for questions. But if you have questions, please donate. And on that note, my man Shocks asked a question. He said, any opinion on Sicilius women? I don't know what that means.
Me neither. I have to plead ignorance on that one.
Okay, but hearing that, Doc, and also Burundi women are an option. I've seen this video before. They're gorgeous. They're pretty. What's your take on what they said about the women from Burundi, starting with Ike and then Doc?
So part of the reason why I wanted to play that because remember we were talking about the fact that the 0.5% divorce rate does not mean life is a bed of roses. It does not mean that people didn't do what people do, right? Does not mean that angels reside in this particular place. It means something else. And I think that this video kind of emphasized that aspect of like, okay, well, in terms of like the war, the trauma, and all that, those other types of things, talking about adhering steadfast to certain norms. And with even though you can tell from the narrator, she was kind of like, she mentioned, well, I think this might be limiting to the women, but that kind of a thing. But that idea, I think, was emphasized in this, basically saying that this is a particular attribute of humanity. And if I would go back to my when I said there's nature, there's duty, and then there's aspirations that you may have, right?
Right,
As
right,
fundamental to any kind of society. And basically that the West has gone way off on the aspirations end and not coming back to the duty and nature aspect. I think nature really suffers a lot. If you just look at let's just call it the intellectual landscape, any kind of nature, even biological nature, right? Any kind of substrate of any sort is kind of demeaned, seen as anachronistic and old way of thinking. Like, it is called essentialism. You're an essentialist. Right. So the idea of talking about your nature as a man, your nature as a woman, and then the duties that and therefore sacrifices, and the deal that has to happen, the fundamental political deal that has to happen, right? Where because you can't just you have to use the base nature of people in order to form a society. They don't become angels when society is formed. It's basically a deal that says, hey, man, in order to take on this particular responsibility, your particular base need to be kind of glorified, if you will, and achieve something will be met. If you're a particular type of man in the society, we will bestow that upon you. And women, if you check, and therefore you have to check certain aspects of yourself, right? You have to check your violent nature and all these other things. Women, same thing. You check this hypergamy thing or blah, 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 or the ways in which you're likely to manipulate and such. And then you will be an honorable woman, right? But the idea that we just ignore that we have nature, the biggest down part of that is we ignore that we are sinful creatures, to put it in just simple colloquialism there. Like, it's like you ignore your nature, now you think you're an angel, but you de facto declare that we're not freaking angels and this, and all that, right? So I think that this video kind of encapsulated a whole bunch of that. Those are my thoughts anyways.
Yeah, and it reverberates the sentiment. Dua Muhammad said, I'm enjoying the show because it's rare for us African women to be seen as an option because most of the time it's focused on Colombia. And Doc, you know more about that. You and I were in Brazil, and you said it so poetically. You said don't sleep on Africa. What did you learn about the women in Senegal and also in Gambia that more or less parrots the sentiment of why men shouldn't sleep on women in Africa?
Well, let me just say this. It's interesting that you played that video because while I was in Senegal, I went on dates with a woman from Burundi.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And a woman from Kenya. Okay. And both of these were, educated women and, very pleasant women, very nice, women. The Burundi woman, I would just say this: these were women they've been westernized, and they have a combination of the traditional as well as the so-called modern and what have you, and I had very pleasant experiences with both of these women. Interestingly, the woman from Kenya who I did date, she was very feminist oriented. She had a very feminist mindset.
Right.
And she was very clear about that. She was a single woman in her early 30s and what have you, not married, no children, what have you, and no intentions of getting married and having children. And so This idea that all African women fit this type of mold is just not true. You know what I mean? And you have variation, so you have to make room for all that. But that was a part of my wonderful experience in Senegal, in the city of Dakar, in particular, that you have a variety of women who are there. But the wonderful thing about my experience was, kind of similar to Brazil. There was no attack. There was no sense that um, heterosexual interactions between men and women was somehow abnormal or pathological or demonic. You know what I mean? In the Western societies, rather, people have gone overboard with this thing called toxic masculinity and what have you, and it has damaged relations between men and women. And so, what I experienced in my time in West Africa, and this is true for Gambia as well, is that the African women that I met and I encountered were very laid back. They were very open. Senegal and Gambia are very tolerant. These are predominantly Muslim countries or what have you, but they are not strict, hardcore, super orthodox countries. They have their strictures, they have their rules, and what have you. There's a demand for decorum and everything, but it's not so stringent where you can't have basic heterosexual, positive, pro-social interactions, with women. And so that the absence of all of the toxicity in the West is just refreshing. It is just refreshing.
Right.
And again, I mean, you can, just walking up to people, you can walk up to people and just have a regular conversation. Hello, how are you doing? What is your name? What have you? And there is no drama that is attached to it. You understand? And so
Right,
it's
right,
very,
right.
very, very, very different. And so it makes you, as someone who's an American Black man, it just makes you um, attach yourself, to what is there,
Right.
and then again layered on to the traditions. We're talking about thousands and thousands of years of religious tradition, thousands of years of African and indigenous traditions, where traditional masculinity is understood in a particular way and traditional femininity is understood in a particular way. That only facilitates everything that is there. And so um, you can't help. I couldn't help but be drawn to it. You understand? And the reality is that there's an interest in American men. There's an interest in American Black men.
Right, 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 right.
Just as much as we are fascinated with them, they are fascinated and interested in us. You understand? And I have to go back to what Ike says. No, of course, you're not going to find flawless women. I mean, you've got the underside of femininity that is there, and I saw the underside of femininity that is there. You understand? But the underside is not the dominant impulse that is there. You understand what I'm saying? So that is that um, um, it is offset by the fact that you have a society that is still shaped by those traditions, where there's still respect for those traditions. Um, you know, Despite the fact that globalization um, is compelling those societies to shift and to move in certain kinds of ways. Global, and I've said this on my own platform. Globalization is just something that's inescapable. You can't get around it.
Right, right.
We are all exposed to one another. They have the internet. They got social media. Um, they're exposed, but at the same time, they have buffers. That they have buffers. So I will say, Senegal in particular, so this is a French-speaking country, predominantly French, and what have you. And similar to Brazil, where Portuguese is the dominant language, um, the language stands as a kind of firewall. It's a firewall to certain aspects of Western culture, especially
Doc,
especially American culture.
Doc, do me a favor real quick. Hold tight. Freeze your point. Ike got to go. Ike, I know you got to go. You text me in the back. But before you go, Ike, what else you wanted to add to the conversation before you go? What did you get from the conversation? The young lady, Masara Muhammad, said, it's so pleasant for us to talk about it. For some reason, Ike, I said, all my shows have been talking about passports and pearls as it relates to South America and then the American assignment. But I said, we need to go to Africa. And I thought about you and Doc. And I'm so honored to have Doc on the show. But before you go, African women are a viable choice, and you talked about it in part. But what did you garner from the show? What did you gather? And how does a man need to vet a woman, an African woman, for a wife? It's loaded. But what did you gather from the show? And how does a man need to vet a woman going to Africa? Now I'm going to let Doc finish because I know you got to go.
Ooh, the vet one, I may have to punt a little bit on that because that's a whole other 3-hour show, right?
Okay, all right.
Because not everybody is built with the same kinds of instrumentation, nor is everyone looking for the same thing. So there's some people whom, let's say for me, for example, there's almost like a vibe check that I can do with someone. But not everybody is built that way. And when I say vibe check, I'm not just talking about some woo stuff, okay? But there is so let me take, for example, since we all have, strengths, we can all have like a blind spot. It kind of goes with having the strength, right? And ultimately, you want to be able to have a woman that has something complementary in that kind of psychological construct that'll work well for your blind spot, right? And typically, so this is why I'm talking about that instrumentation from the internal perspective. So you have to do the vetting, right? So I think that there's something that needs to be done internally first in terms of checking your instrument panels, right? And figuring out, and then you go vet. So I think a big part of it is kind of figuring out what that particular blind spot is so that you can then key in with the other person. For me, for example, I know that I need somebody that's particularly strong, right? And particularly on the more thinking dominant than feeling dominant. Even in the woman, right? But in terms of the show in general, I think that we really drill down on a few points here about nature, and at the end of the day, it comes down to: are you okay with nature? Are you a kind of woman that can say, like a test, for example, a woman that can say, "Well, you know how women are." That's a check. That's a pointing in the direction of a notion of nature, a notion of and being okay with it, right? This is how men are. This is how women are, and to say it in a non-ironic, non-strange way, and these are also answering the vetting questions, right? In a certain way, right? To say it in a non-ironic, non-strange way, those are things that you would check. To speak of duty in a way that that doesn't have to then mix with the ego. Right? Where you don't have to always protect your ego when you're talking about duty, which is a sign of that kind of over aspirational aspect towards which I'm saying the whole West has moved towards, right? Where it's very, you mentioned solipsism in the show, kosher clinician, right? That kind of a notion of, okay, I can't speak of duty without having to talk about, well, but my freedom, blah, blah. It's like, duty is a different thing, okay? All right. So there's a certain kind of matter of factness to talking about duty, which is another check that I do. And I think, that you should be able to discern these from communication. And then there are tests, okay? Like tests of, now obviously you check that there's a good relationship with the father, right? That's, goes into vetting big time. There's certain tests that you do which have to do with, does she respect your role in the relationship? Even this is before marriage, before you even propose. This is let's say you're talking about, you're trying to get to a particular outcome, right? So vetting is vetting for what? You're vetting for a long-term outcome. You're going to marry this person, start family, whatever, right? So you want to make sure that they're already that, as Kevin Samuels used to say, that they're already a wife, as the right, that way. And that will be tests of your particular authority. Like, for example, if you were to say, hey, I want you to do X, Y, and Z in this particular, I've arranged this particular thing in this way, or let me put it even simply like this. Like, you know what? I got you a gym, a personal trainer. And I think because you need to do X, Y, maybe that's because that's what's important to you. And the way in which she takes that, or whatever kind of thing that you're set up in the real world that you say, okay, go, I've chosen the path, go. See what happens. Okay. Because that'll tell you all kinds of things, because that's what whether it's a business or marriage and all those type of things, that's like 99% of what it is this kind of, okay, I'm going to trust you to do your part, and I'm going to move forward accordingly. So I did these checks, that I have, I know you too, you also have a very firm hand, especially with West African women.
Right.
Of a particular sort. And what I mean by firm hand is like they expect you to be like, because again, there's that whole kind of baseline, right? If you measure from a Western standard, the rambunctiousness of the average Nigerian human being, whether male or female, seems like they're already at 5 or 6, but that's their zero. You just got to recalibrate where your zero is, and then see that, oh, okay, she's not crazy. It's just a loud West African woman. But the fact still remains, it's a 0.5% divorce rate, because the tradition is higher than her rambunctiousness. But anyways, those are my final thoughts.
Well, listen, man, I'll bring you back, man. We'll do a show talking about how to vet a West African woman. We'll make it comprehensive. Thank you for tuning in, man. I appreciate your time. Me and Doc.
No problem. Shout out to Dr. Ron O'Neill as well. Always a pleasure. And
I'm gonna let Doc take the wheel, but I'm glad you came in, man. And please come on again, Ike. I appreciate it, brother. Thank you, sir.
Peace.
All right, be good. All right. Shout out to my man Shocks for that $10 super sticker. He said that many brothers actually prefer the daughters of the continent, but how us black men come back to stereotypes promoted by the West. And that's a deal, right? And I'm gonna let Doc answer that in a minute. And then also shout out to my man Tim Howard. He said a great show, SYSBM and Passport Travel. And then shout out to my man Soar C. He said, I appreciate all you brothers slowly getting back into the contribution game. Thank you for your time, Jim. No doubt. Thank you, Soar C.
That's a bet, right?
That's a deal, right?
That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right?
The proper of vetting. He talked about nature, duty, and also the woman's nature. What shocked you the most, Doc, about the nature of women in Senegal and Gambia? Because you're right, many times we talk about South America. You and I both were in South America last year in Brazil. But let's look at the parallels or the paradoxes between the West African woman and also the Brazilian women. What was the paradoxical difference that you saw between the two, Doc?
I mean, they both come from very traditional cultures and everything. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't say there's a paradox. I would just say that women all over the world, they want something, and so yeah, it is true. I mean, there are trade-offs. You know what I mean? And so when you're coming to them, they see something, and you see something, and there's an exchange. You understand? I think that's the thing that stands out, is that there is an exchange. Someone might call it a transaction or what have you. It is what it is, because they know, based on how they've been socialized and acculturated and what have you, that there's a task, there's something that they have to bring to you, and that you as a man, shaped, as a man, in traditional ways or what have you, you have to do your job. You understand? And so the thing about it is that there is clarity. There is clarity. There is no ambiguity. There's no ambiguity about what a man is, what a woman is, and those kind of traditional characteristics that we assign to each gender and what have you. And so the lack of ambiguity is what stands out. You understand? Now, like I said before, you're going to have situations you might meet people who will try to manipulate, or who will try to, get over on you. You know what I mean? And that's just, I think that's just all over the world. You understand? And so you just have to, be sensitive to that. And it goes back to what you were talking about with Ike in terms of vetting. And if you're a man who's lived in the world and you've dealt with women, you can pick up on it. I mean, it doesn't. It shouldn't take you a whole lot to figure out if somebody is trying to take advantage of you, or exploit you or manipulate you or scam you and that sort of thing. It don't take a whole lot, and then it don't take a whole lot for you to figure out if a person is sincere, and they really want to have a connection and they really want to have a mutual exchange, between you. But I would say the difference is, socially, I found, my experience in Senegal, to be more hospitable.
Right.
And Brazil is laid back. They got hospitality that is there. But my experience, was one where people were more laid back. They were more laid back and easygoing and what have you. And I had more positive relations in Senegal, Dakar in particular, and in Gambia than I did in Brazil.
When we talk about, how can I say it? Don't cast your pearls to swine. What was the allure of Senegal, Senegambia, that made you want to give your pearls to an African woman that honors tradition and a healthy patriarchy?
It was the culture. It was the culture. Like I said, just a laid back culture, man. And we talk about coolness, the idea of coolness in black people. You are right there, at the source. You're looking at the source of what it means to be cool and to be laid back and swag and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And not to say it's not. I didn't see it in Brazil or what have you, but it was just a different vibe. It was just a vibe. I'll give you an example. So when I was in Gambia, Gambia reminded me of Jamaica. I've been to Jamaica, Ocho Rios, been to Kingston, and Gambia felt like Kingston, Jamaica, and just the vibe that was there, and there's a very interesting relationship between Gambia and Jamaica. There's a lot of reggae music that's played there and what have you. And it just the vibe, man. In terms of entertainment and in terms of the nightlife and everything like that. It just, I was just very, 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 very comfortable. You know what I mean? And then, you're surrounded. So the big other thing is you're surrounded by black skin. So on my posts, I've said this about Africa, to the guys who follow me and what have you. I said, that the coffee is better. The coffee is better in Africa. Is blacker, is darker, is better, and you're around all this blackness. You understand? So when you're dealing with Latin American cultures, that have been inundated with certain kinds of whiteness, and it's not the same kind of whiteness that you find in the West, but it is whiteness nonetheless. It kind of diffuses um, the thickness of the black experience. So the thing about Senegal, when I was there at the time, especially my first trip there, and when I was by myself, just traveling alone, I was just I was just taken away by just being surrounded by blackness. To my, you're in a black country, a country ran by black people. Of course, it's a country that has been dominated for a long time by the French.
Right.
But when you walk into businesses, you walk into restaurants, you walk into cafes, you go to the laundromat, you go to the grocery store, you get in the cab, you just do your day-to-day thing. You're dealing with black people, and that is profound in and of itself. To see a country that is ran by black people, you see, and you see black people at a variety of levels,
Right.
contrary to all the myths that the passport haters like to put out, about passport bros, which basically say that, we're dealing with poor, downtrodden, ashy foot people.
Yeah, ashy foot, right? Dirty
You
foot.
know what I'm saying? I mean, let me tell you something, man. I was around Africans, who live much better than many black people in the United States. Driving around in Range Rovers, living in plush homes, people who have businesses, people who are at the highest levels of, professional life in their countries and what have you. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? Whereas you go to a country, Brazil, in Brazil, the dark skinned black people, they at the bottom. They just at the
Right.
bottom.
Right.
They ain't running anything. Black people in Brazil are not running anything. Okay. And so that's the difference right there. You understand? And you got middle class women, you've got upper class women. You go to the grocery store and you see them. And they're not trying to leave their countries. They love their countries and what have you. And again, you can engage them. And as I said earlier, there's the Islamic factor. There's Islam, and Islam makes a difference. And even French, Africans, the way Africans speak French is not the way in which the Parisians, the French people, speak French in the white French world. You know what I mean? And they have their own francophone culture that is
Right.
there. You understand? So that's the difference right there.
Shout out to my man Brandon Jeff for that 10. He said, "Great discussion, gentlemen. I've never seen Dr. Neil smile so much when African women were discussed." Yeah, I agree.
That's a
He
bet,
was,
right? That's a deal,
laughing
right?
like
That's a
damn chess
deal,
cat.
right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right?
That's the
That's a
thing.
deal, right?
That's the thing, man. So here's the thing, man. If you want you, so here's the thing. I'm just out of it. My primary attraction is to black women.
Right.
That's my primary attraction.
Like most of us.
I love women in general, right? I love women in general, and I've done all the shades and all that kind of stuff. You understand what I'm saying? But melanin, we talk, what people say, what we say here in America, melanated people and all that kind of stuff, or melanated women. You understand? And it is what it is, and again, I like them light skinned, I like them tan or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But I like them chocolate, I like them black. You understand? And if you are a black man, and I'm going to say this until I die, if you are a black man and you want you a chocolate woman, you want you a black, I'm a brown man. My father is this color right here. He's this color. Okay. My mother was light skinned. She was light bright. My mother was a mulatto. She was a super mulatto with full lips and kinky hair. That was my mother. You understand what I'm saying? But I grew up wanting blackness. You understand what I'm saying? And so you walk into, I'm going to tell you, man, you got the finest, and this is all you brothers who are listening. And I told this to Kosher, and I told this to everybody else. They in Brazil now. You got some dark-skinned, chocolate, black, super fine women in Brazil. They there. They there. And let me tell you something. I love it, and I'm going to go back to it. I got to go to Salvador Bahia. But when I was in Senegal and when I was in Gambia, I saw the most attractive, gorgeous, pretty, voluptuous black women that I've ever seen in my life. Knocking out, even if we got them here in America, but it'll make you think 10 times about America.
Right.
It'll change your mind.
Right.
Just seeing that with your own eyes does something to you psychologically. And you're dealing with, here's the other thing, you're dealing with people with a different orientation. It's a different orientation, a different psychology, mentality. Okay? Again, I talked about Islam and what have you. When people take family seriously, marriage seriously,
right.
legacy seriously, tradition seriously, You understand what I'm saying? Shame. Seriously.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? The ratchets don't run the culture.
Right.
The ratchets don't run things.
And that's the question I wanted to ask you, Doc. Are women in general shamed for having kids out of wedlock based on what you've seen in Senegambia?
Yes.
Talk about that.
Yes.
Talk about
they
it.
tell me. And I've had the conversations that yes, because particularly in an Islamic society, yeah, you have it. If you get pregnant and you're not married, it comes with a stigma.
Mhm.
It comes with a stigma, and one of the stigmas is that men ain't gonna mess with you.
Mhm.
That's the stigma. The stigma is that, the society will love you and what have you, but you stigmatized. You understand? Having babies out of wedlock is not something that is elevated. It is not celebrated. Unlike it is in America, we don't, they don't. Single mothers are not heroes.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's one thing that you learn, very fast. When you go there, you understand. And the women who are really about themselves, the single women, the last thing that they trying to do is have a baby outside of wedlock. Okay. Now they got it. They got it now. The women got it. Okay. But it does affect them, socially. You know what I'm saying? So it's just very, very different. And even virginity is a big thing.
Mm.
It's a big thing. Again, we're talking about Islamic society and what have you. And it is what it is, man. It is what it is.
What is the penalty, man, for promiscuity, but also having kids out of wedlock in Gambia and Senegal, or Senegambia?
No marriage.
No marriage, right?
Yeah, I mean that's it. I mean, guys, traditional Muslim people, men and women, the idea is that you have babies in marriage, and you marry somebody until you die. They have divorce. You marry somebody until you die or divorce or what have you. But it's the death part that stands out. You know what I mean? And that's it. But from my sense, and I'm preparing to go back, in 2023. What we do in America, it don't work there. You don't have. I mean, men marrying single mothers and being stepdaddies. That's not like a tradition. You know what I mean? And part of it has to do with the extended family. So the extended family plays such a role in raising children that there is a relative safety net for children that are born out of wedlock. Okay, but you don't have, like we do, a long tradition of men marrying women who have children from other men. You understand? And so that's a lesson for all of us in terms of how this part of the world works.
Doc, you talked about feeling that peace when you were in Senegal and Gambia, and let's do a comparison contrast with the stress levels in Africa or in Senegal against Senegambia compared to here in the West. Let's talk about the comparison or the dichotomy between the two.
Yeah. So the thing is that you don't have so we live in a very competitive culture in America. And everything is, we live in a rat race, a dog eat dog and all that kind of stuff. And individualism is very high, and, materialism. Right now, family is devalued. Human relationships are devalued. And that is stressful, you know what I mean? And the reality is, and I've said this on previous broadcast that you've done, and that is that we're not programmed to be alone. Human beings is not It is not. Some people call it nature, but it's just not the way we are designed
Right.
to be. But men or women, it's
We're
just not.
better together. We're better together.
It ain't. That's not the design. You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And the dysfunction of the West is of such where it has elevated people being alone as some type of liberation. You understand? So when you travel to different parts of the world that are more social, so one thing, the beautiful thing about my experience in just going there, and even Brazil as well, is that the culture, it's a social culture, that people are social, they're interacting. And if it's not with their families, it's with friends, it's with connections and what have you. You don't have high levels of individualism. So it's kind of like here we have this whole problem with mass shooters and the whole phenomenon of incels and all that kind of stuff. And stereotypically, these people are like people who are isolated, they're by themselves, they don't have any connections and what have you. And the idea is that they have broken down psychologically because they don't have human connections. Okay. And then they act out. You understand? Another example is what happens with prisons. You worked in prisons.
Yeah, I did.
You know what it's like to put people in solitary confinement. You know what happens to men, and it happens even to women too, but more so we know more about men in solitary confinement. When you put a person by themselves for a long period of time with no human connection, that person, if they're not strong enough, that person will break.
They'll break, right.
They will break. So you have a culture outside of America where that doesn't make any sense. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
That is that people are interacting. Okay. And I give an example, like, when I went to Brazil, one of the profound things that I saw, and I've told the story again, I said over and over again, was watching homeless people, was watching homeless men and women be together. Walking through the streets of Rio, and I saw a couple laying on cardboard, with sheets and what have you, holding each other.
Right.
And I'm like, that's it right there. You understand what I'm saying? In America, we call, if you're a man, you ain't got no money, you dusty, you're
Right.
obsolete and what have you. The women, they don't want to mess with you or what have you. I go to this country, the homeless people can get together. The poor people can get together and have real relationships.
Right.
On the street and don't even have roof over their head.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
That speaks to the social dynamic in the culture.
Right.
That things that you're a clinician. The world is interdependent.
Right. Interdependent. Right.
So you're going into a culture that still has the interdependent dynamic.
Right. And we used to be that way. We used to be that way at one point, Doc. But sad, I believe liberalism and liberal ideologues have more or less transfixed the minds of so many of our women, Doc, to the point that they have been so encapsulated by the assumption that they are being oppressed by men that it hinders them from being in relationships that can not only benefit them but community. And I've said before in the past, Doc, that when they come down to power, sadly, not all, but many of our women vote for themselves. But when they come down to servitude, they want men to come and give their service unconditionally. And then when we don't do it, they try to shame us. Doc, here recently, Dr. Alan Roger Curry passed away, and he was the purveyor of Mode 1. And, it touched me deeply. So many men are passing away. Men are dying off. Great content creators like him and Kevin Samuels. They're gone, man. And one thing I love about you, you say live out loud. Live out loud, Black male agency, Black male independence. Is game needed in Africa?
No.
Tell the audience why.
No. Game is not needed. Going back to what I just said in terms of, the culture being social. You understand? And game is not needed because relationships are valued. Relationships between men and women, they're taken seriously. You understand? And again, I don't want to, we're not romanticizing anything like that. They have their flaws and what have you. And when you talk to the women, they have their own ideas of good men and bad men and stuff like that. But when I talk, when I have talked to people, is that relationships are valuable. Um, Relationships are more valuable than, or I would say not more valuable, but they are not competing with money and materialism and that sort of thing. And so, um, the whole idea of game is about psychological manipulation. That's what game is about. And game is about getting over, taking advantage of somebody emotionally and what have you. And that's not necessary in a context where people are adults. I put it like this: they're adults. We're talking about adults, men and women. Let me tell you something. So, hey, one thing that's interesting, and I posted this picture on my Facebook page of two women from Gambia, young women in their mid-20s, whom I met. Okay, you would be taken by the level of maturity that women have in their 20s over there. I mean, the level of, I'm talking about psychologically. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like here in the United States, your average 20-year-old female, she's thinking like she's 15 to 16 years old. Okay. You go to Gambia, you meet a 20-year-old, she's thinking like she's 30 years old. You understand what I'm saying? And the reason why you're doing that is because they still have the connection between the generations. Okay. You still have connections between grandmothers and grandfathers, aunts and uncles, and all that kind of stuff, which we once had, which values a relationship. How does that relate? How does that relate to game? You don't need no game if you are a mature human being and you're able to connect with another human being who is mature, who is fully formed. So there is a level of immaturity that is tied to what we call game in the West. And here's the other thing. Here's the problem with game in the West. Game in the West is short term. Game is fundamentally oriented towards short term relationships.
Right.
So, in as much as I appreciated Alan Roger Curry, and rest in peace to him, and he did a lot in terms of the heterosexual male space, and there's a lot to say about what he did and what have you. But Mode One, and his whole philosophy, all of that was geared towards short-term relationships.
Right.
That's your people who are coming in and out of your life. So game only works on the short term. Game does not work when you're dealing with a culture that is not oriented towards primarily short-term relationships.
Right.
So when you're meeting women, we talk about traditional women or whatever, when you're meeting women who have been shaped by tradition, they're not interested. Ike talked about this.
Right.
Ike said this earlier. He was making a distinction between immediate gratification and long-range type thinking. You understand what I'm saying? That is that in a traditional culture, people are oriented towards the long term. They're not oriented towards hedonism in the moment. So game is about hedonism in the moment. That's why game typically, works for young guys. It's good for guys who are in college, good for guys who are in their early 20s, good for young bachelors and what have you, and sometimes going into your 30s. Game, it works in a culture, I'll put it like this, in a culture in America that has basically destroyed the importance of long-term relationships. So game works in America when you've destroyed marriage, when you've destroyed family, when there is no possibility of being in a long-term relationship.
Right. I totally agree. But also when you more or less aggrandize entitlement, Doc, traveling abroad opens your eyes up to a lot of things, and to the single men that are listening, what do they need to know about the Senegambian women in order to become successful in relationships. Some say be yourself. Some say, what type of decorum do they need to have? Should this be themselves? How do they approach a woman of West African culture if they want a good woman?
Yeah, I think that you need to be yourself. I think you need to learn. And here's what I want you guys to do. I need you to learn as much as you can about the culture before you go there. I've been studying, West African traditions for a minute. You know what I mean? I'm not an expert, but I didn't go into those parts of Africa without some type of familiarity with the culture. You understand? Senegal is a French-speaking country, okay? And I had to brush up on French that I learned years ago. Kind of basic, rudimentary French in order to get around and what have you. So it's important that you know some of the basic aspects of the culture. It's an Islamic culture, so you need to understand, how they're oriented in terms of Islam. You know what I mean? You have some Christians there. Christianity is a minority tradition, and I met some Christian Gambian women that are there, evangelical and what have you. They exist. And in Senegal, you have Catholicism and you have the evangelical traditions, but the predominant tradition is Islam and what have you. So, to know that, and and to be yourself, and to also recognize that you're an American. You do have currency as an American. You're going to be seen. You're American. You're seen in a certain kind of way. America is seen in a certain kind of way, and that's an advantage that you have. That's leverage. It's a positive thing. It's a positive thing. Um, if it does become negative, it's only if you're dealing with people who might try to scam you because you're a tourist or you're someone who is a visitor. So you have to be aware of folks who might want to exploit you economically because you're visiting the country and what have you, and that's going to happen wherever you go, anywhere in the world. So those are kind of the basic things, but you don't have to walk up in there like you some super player if that's not who you are. I'll put it like that. If that is not who you are, if you are not, one of these over the type, ladies men and what have you, you don't go up in there trying to be that way. And I'm gonna be honest with you, even if you are an over the top ladies man, you want to have some decorum. You know what I'm saying? You want to have some decorum. When you go there, you don't want to, be too much of a beast. I put it like that. You know what I'm saying? You just need to tame it, keep it under control. Because I'm telling you this now, in Senegal, the men protect their women now. They protect their women. They protect their women, and they know that you're American, and they can see that you're an American, and they know that you got eyes on their women. I'm put it like that. They know that you got eyes on their women, and you might have some interactions. I had some interactions.
Talk about them real quick. Talk about
some Senegalese men. They see you interacting with the women, and the women are responding to you, and you have guys. I'll give you an example, man. So I walked up into a boutique. There were these women. There's a boutique not far from where I was living. This is my first experience there, and I just walked up in there, just being a social man, talking to the women. You know what I'm saying? These two sisters, and they were selling purses, they were selling jewelry, they were just selling stuff, women stuff, right? So I just walked up in there just to be friendly with them. You know what I mean? And they were very responsive, man.
Right.
And I would say less than 10 minutes in my conversation, man, some Senegalese guys, man, he just walked up in there, and I guess he knew them. He didn't come in there to do business. He came in there to police me. Okay.
Right.
Well, as I was talking to these women, you know what I mean? And I found it interesting and humorous and laughable. But what it was clear, and that wasn't the first time something like that had happened. Yeah, those guys are protective. They're protective. Now the women gonna make their choices. They're gonna choose whether they're gonna deal with you or not. But the women were very open and hospitable to me. And he didn't know me, and he must have saw the play in me or something like that.
It's all the player. Shout out to my man GC from LA for that 10, man.
That's a bet, right?
I appreciate
That's a
it,
deal,
man.
right?
You know,
That's a deal, right?
And, I appreciate
bet,
GC
right?
from
That's
LA.
a deal,
Thank you,
right?
sir.
That's a
But
deal,
that is
right?
true.
Got 5 on it.
And I had similar experience in grocery stores. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? You know what I mean? You talk to the women. Now, some of the Singhalese guys, not to their credit, them guys know if they see you talking to the women, they ain't gonna mess with you. You know what I'm saying? They just leave it alone, whatever. But you have some guys, you know, who are very protective or whatever. You know what I mean? They're not gonna step to you and say anything to you. But they might do some cop blocking and play some interference. And so
what that look like? Hold tight. Shout out to my man Sir Hill, the young lion, for that 5. Thank you, Sir Hill. Thank you to the young lion. He killing the game right there. That young man is growing, and I appreciate it, brother. But what does it look like, Doc?
they might,
Invariably.
I mean, you can have a conversation, you know what I'm saying? He might come up and he start talking to her in French. He might start talking to her in Wolof. Even though I don't speak fluent French or whatever, you know what's going on right there. You know what I'm saying? You got somebody that's player hating on you. You know what I'm saying? You know, and you know, he might know her, he might not know her. You understand what I'm saying? But that's that protective Islamic masculinity that comes out or what have you. But you know, I have to say that I didn't experience a whole lot of that. But you can have moments that you run into that depending on your situation. Again, I was at a boutique one time, then I was in a grocery store another time. You know, you get some of that or what have you. And then at other times, most of the guys, they don't care. They don't care because they have a surplus. So here's the thing about it. They got a surplus. You got men from France who are coming in. You got Frenchmen that are coming in dealing with women. You got men from Canada who are coming in, white men. You got white men coming in. You got men from Germany. You got men from all over, all parts of Europe coming into West Africa, getting women. You understand what I'm saying? So, and everybody knows what's going on with that. You see what I'm saying? And so, I mean, it's done, you know. So you know, and it could be some, you know, masculinity thing going on. You know, you American black man, he's African man. You know, it depends on again the context, the person. But most of them Singhalese guys, they ain't care.
You know, what would you take from this show? We're gonna end it in a minute. My Heels about to play Clemson for that
Oh, yeah.
ACC championship. But you know, like I said, you know, I thought about you and Ike for this show. It was very impromptu. I said, let me come up with a thumbnail for Doc and Ike, and specifically Ike, because he's from Nigeria. But what can you take away from this show? Because once again, men are dying off early. Doc, I don't know if you're going to ever get married. Maybe you will, you might not. But for a man that want to set up his homestead in Africa, what are the challenges and barriers, and I'm associated with a man trying to set up a homestead in West Africa? And then what did you get from the show that was so profound?
And I want to say shout out to James Turner. James Turner is right, man. You can stick out too much now. You got to watch out for that. James Turner put that in the chat right there. You know, you're taller than me, Kosher, and I'm 6'1", man. I'm 6'1". You know, I tend to average about 210, 215. You know what I'm saying? I got my glasses. I walk in the synagogue, ain't nobody wearing no glasses like me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so, and I got stairs and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, when you stand out, they see you. You know what I mean? Then you got the mannerisms. They know you American. I'll put it like that. They know you American.
Right.
And all that, and and there's stuff that comes with that, good and bad, but not enough to keep you out those countries. I'll put it like that. You know what I'm saying? But the major takeaway, that I have is that Africa is an option. Africa is a major, major, major option that brothers should not overlook. Okay. Again, I'm going back to West Africa in 2023 real soon. I'm also going to East Africa. I plan to do that sometime during the summertime. The Kenya, Uganda part, East Africa, and what have you. I look forward to that. You know what I mean? And we don't talk enough about, I said this when I first came on, the continent of Africa. You know what I mean? And in the passport community, and you started, you talked about O'Shea's new Pan-African dating thing and all that. This needs to be talked about, because we need to have a healthy relationship with Africa. And I think the African women are an option, man. They're a viable option.
Oh
Man.
yeah,
Let me
yeah,
tell
yeah.
you something. So
Definitely viable. Yeah.
I mean, and the thing is that, and I said this on, on my own channel, on Facebook and what have you, man. I've relocated my attraction, my desire for Black women in the world. It has relocated. You know what I mean? In general, I mean, it's relocated to Caribbean, to South America, but in particular, it has relocated to Africa. Okay, because I felt a connection to Africa when I was there, especially my second trip. I was there for 34 days. I had a connection there that I haven't had anywhere that I've traveled to in the world. I didn't want to leave. My last day, the day before I left, it was very emotional experience. You guys, whether you know it or not, I met a woman in Africa, in Senegal, who I've been involved with, um, who who I care for. You know what I'm saying? And we spent lots of time together on my return, to Senegal, and I met other women too. But the human connection that I experienced was just so profound, that I came to the conclusion that the brothers don't need to focus exclusively on the world, the international world, beyond Africa. You understand what I'm saying? Again, 1.2 billion people together, over a half a billion women from east to west, north to south. There's so much to tap into. And women are just a window into the culture. That's what they are. An entree into a larger thing that's going on. Okay. When I was in Gambia, man, I was at the Atlantic. I'm looking at the Atlantic where slaves were transported from Gambia to North America. When I was in Senegal, I went to Gorée Island and I saw what happened in Gorée Island, in terms of the slave trade and what have you.
Right.
So when we talk about West Africa, and we mentioned, Nigeria and all that kind of stuff, it ain't just about some women. It's about memory. It's about reconnecting.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Remember Alex Haley, the book Roots was based in West Africa. It dealt with the Gambian experience.
Right.
And in Gambia, you go to Gambia, you can go to those places that are featured in that book Roots and in that film, that whole the history of what Alex Haley was talking about. So that's what I'm talking about.
The Dinka tribe. Shocks, that last question. We're gonna sign off, Doc. Get ready for this football game. Last question for me: why are the American women here heavily into divesting and blackmail bashing? Just some I noticed they louder than Black women at times. What's your take on that, Doc?
Those are westernized African women who were either born here in the U.S. Or they were born in Africa, but were raised in the U.S. All right, and so those women who do that, so those are particular types of African women who have a strong identification with their white colonizers, a very, very strong identification, whether they're Nigerian. A lot of them are Nigerian. There's a whole bunch of Nigerian divestors that are out there that are like that. Some of them are from, Cameroon, Congo, or whatever. You know what I mean? I haven't seen too many Ghanaian people who are like that. But those women are women who have really been inundated with American culture. And a lot of those women when they do go back to their home countries, they're seen as American, more American than they are African. You know what I'm saying? And so, like in Nigeria, and I'm sorry, Ike is not here, they call them Americana. So if you get a Nigerian woman who has been, deeply Americanized, when she goes back to Nigeria, she's not seen as an authentic or a true Nigerian. She's Americana. You understand what I'm saying? And that's the same, and the same dynamic exists for those Nigerians or even those Africans who have gone to the UK. All right, who live in London and what have you. You know what I mean? So they have a strong identification with the colonizers. And those women, here's the thing: those women are not quite the same as continental African women. When you meet some continental African women on the continent, you got some continental African women, they deal with them Frenchmen, they deal with the Germans and the other European men, but they don't have the type of fixation that the women, the African women or the African-derived women have who live in the West. So, so you're talking about these women who are in Los Angeles, they're Nigerian, they're in New York, some of them in Miami. They just have a strong identification with white daddy,
right,
or white zaddy.
Right. Over-identification and also the minimization of black masculinity in America, but also the joy and power and the struggle of what could be. Doc, it appears that America is on its last leg when it comes down to civility, common sense, but also the honor and respect of traditional heteronormative masculinity. Where do we go from here as we're about to sign off? And thank you, brother, for tuning in. I still want to do another show. I don't know. I guess I need to do a special show with you, Gambia. But maybe you answered all the questions, man. But I'm glad you tuned in. But go ahead, Doc. Where do we go from here, man? Because, your war cry is black male independence and black male agency. But where do men go from here, those that are single and looking for traditional women?
Yeah, I would just say this, anything worth having is something that you got to work for. And to become a man takes work. And the stuff that we're talking about here involves work. If you want a better situation in terms of your dynamics with women, you got to work. Travel involves work. Being able to travel involves work.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If you can, if you're a truck driver, you know what I mean, and you have reached the upper echelons of truck driving, you know what I'm saying? You're someone who has put in a lot of work to be, that high caliber person in your field. Similarly, in terms of your profession, you're a licensed clinical social worker. There are levels to this thing, right?
Right.
And you keep on working. So your personal life, your emotional life requires that kind of work. And so the thing about it is that, passport stuff that we're talking about, travel ideology, is not for people who are unwilling to put in any kind of work.
Right.
If you want a better life, you're going to have to make those investments.
Sacrifice. Right.
To have it, to travel, to stay in the country for a month, 3 months, 4 months, a year, or whatever, or to travel 2 or 3 times, 4 or 5 times a year, what have you, that requires an investment and sacrifice. That requires that you become disciplined and what have you. So every black man has to look in within himself and figure out what kind of investment he's going to make. If you don't want this matrix, if you're tired of this American situation, you're going to do whatever it takes to move beyond it. Okay? Travel is a solution. Travel, the passport bro phenomenon, is a solution to a very real problem. And the reason why it's getting so much traction and people are talking about it so much is because it's a solution to a problem.
It's a solution, right. It is a solution. It's a viable solution, but also it's consistent with Dr. William Glasser, where he said the needs drive behaviors. And those 5 core elements are power, fun, freedom, belonging, and survival. And that's what men are looking for. Go ahead.
And the thing is that it's not, women are a piece of it. But the
That
other
piece of
part
it,
of
right.
it, the other part of it is your mental health
Yes, sir.
and your
Right.
state of mind and your well-being. So I'm going to say this. I mean, spending 34 days in Senegal, I've never been to a therapist. You know this, Coach. I've told you before.
Right.
But it was therapy for me.
It was therapy, right?
It was therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
Being away and being in a different environment and culture and orientation, it was healing. It was and being outside of the toxicity
Right.
that is America. And I made a video about that when I was in Gambia, just being at the toxicity of the United States. And we black men have to take that seriously if we if we want well-being, if we don't want to be men who find ourselves going off the hinges. You know, it pains me every time I see these brothers going off the deep end.
Right.
You know what I'm
right.
saying? In terms of violent behavior, reckless behavior, self-destructive behavior. You know what I'm saying? And so you have to invest in your well-being, and that's
I
what
totally agree, man.
that's what it's all about. I have completely checked out. I'm at a place I've completely checked out of the United States. I just don't look at it. I live here, I work here, and I'm gonna continue to live here and work here. But I have, in terms of my emotional life, I'm not invested in America. I don't go out and hang out and run around and do these social things in America that I once did. You understand what I'm saying? Because I found a solution to the problems that I was dealing with in terms of my overall well-being. And so black men can do the same thing. That's where we go. That's where we go. We're not going to change America.
No, we're not. It's going to take, right.
We're not going to reverse this situation that we're dealing with. But there are strategies, there are things that we can do to overcome it, to get out of it, to triumph it, you know, and travel is a part of it. You know what I'm saying? And so if a black man, I don't care what his station is, if he can go out and get a car loan for a car that costs $40,000, which he gonna use to impress some 304, he can get him a passport.
No doubt, definitely.
And he can travel the doggone world.
And see, yes.
If you can go out there and buy you a car that's going to depreciate once you drive it off the lot, it doesn't matter what your station is, you can travel.
I totally agree. Doc, it's been a great one, man. I love you, brother. I'm about to see these heels get it in, man. And shout out to my man, James Turner. Always showing love, James Turner. And there are 7 steps that a man must go do in order to become optimized. Here recently, it's become 8 with this bad internet service that I'm working on, man. But anyway, Doc, it's been a great show, man. I love you, brother. We will do it again, man. Maybe I can get up to Africa with you, man, because I've been wanting to go to South Africa for some time. And also shout out to my man Shocks again. He's a fellow therapist too. Shocks, we need to do a show at some point. Most of the people contribute to the FBA African Rift. Yeah, I totally agree, man. But you're right, man. I'm checking out mentally too because it's very toxic. It's not good for your health. And you will die off early, man, trying to change a culture. They don't care. The lack of self-awareness, the lack of empathy, and also the over-identification with policies that are not consistent with a more stable and a more sound union here in America. But anyway, Doc, signing off, brother. Love you, brother. I'll see you around, brother. Yes, I'll be good. All right. All right, guys, I told you there are 7 steps the men must go do in order to become optimized in world travel and understanding how family play a role on the function of a man. It's paramount as we move forward. So, guys, we're about to end this stream. Hopefully, my heels will be Clemson on tonight. But if they don't, it's just an honor to be in the ACC Championship. So, guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to all the brothers that donated. And shout out to the #1 sponsor, as in James Turner. I appreciate it, James Turner. Shout out to the moderators, Tim Howard, Top Gun, and all the brothers that came in and the young sisters. And so, guys, we're signing off. And I need you guys to remember this. If it ain't 7, it ain't kosher. We signing off, guys. Take care. Be well. All right, guys, the verdict is out 77% of the men out of votes of 102 said that African women are a viable option. That's more than average. And so to the single men, traveling abroad might be your next best choice for finding a traditional woman and find a woman that you can help and certainly help address your missions as a man. 4 minutes after the hour, 8 o'clock, bringing to you live from the greatest state in the union, the Tar Heel State. As we're signing off. And remember this, guys, continue to love yourself. Get your health up. Don't settle for mediocrity. And continue to set values and boundaries that are consistent with helping you become the better version of yourself. Be well, brothers.
In the morning, you got me up all cause you need to talk. To 4 in the evening, wanna break up, say that you've had enough. I'm tired of talking, again and again, argue about everything. You are my darling, this kiss and make up, I know you wanna touch. You call me every night, call me every day, I just wanna get you alone now. Trust me when I say